The day I awakened 10 classes, everyone in Ashfall Academy looked at me like I had won the world's greatest lottery. For 3 whole seconds, I believed them. The awakening hall was packed with first years, instructors, and enough glowing crystals to make the ceiling resemble a captured night sky. One by one, students touched the central prism and received the single class that would shape the rest of their lives. A shield icon meant tank. A red cross meant healer. A silver blade meant swordsman. Nobody questioned the rule because the rule had never failed. Logan stepped up before me and awakened Storm Duelist, an advanced lightning class that skipped the ordinary swordsman path. Blue sparks crawled over his shoulders. Half the hall cheered, and the other half started calculating how long it would take him to reach the national rankings. Logan gave me a confident grin as he passed. He was proud but not cruel. At that moment, he simply had every reason to believe the world liked him better. Then I touched the prism. 10 symbols erupted around me. A sword, a staff, a black dagger, a green cross, a summoning circle, a shield, a bow, a hammer, a beast paw, a pale skull. The hall went so quiet that I heard one instructor drop his pen. My status opened in front of me. Swordsman, mage, assassin, healer, summoner, tank, archer, blacksmith, tamer, necromancer. 10 bronze badges spun in a ring around my wrist, and each one announced the same rank. F. I laughed, because I thought the rank was temporary. The prism had just given me 10 classes. Surely I would level 10 times faster. Grant, the broad-shouldered instructor supervising the ceremony, did not laugh. He ordered a training slime brought into the hall and told me to defeat it. I struck it with a practice sword. The slime burst. A blue spark entered my chest, and my experience bar moved. All 10 experience bars moved. Each received 1/10 of the reward. That was when the cheering changed. 10 classes did not mean 10 times the growth. It meant 1/10 the growth in each. Every skill had its own requirement. Every class had its own evolution trial. And my single pool of earned experience was divided equally, whether I used a class or not. By sunset, the nickname had already spread through the dormitories. 10-fold failure. I tried to prove everyone wrong during the first week. I trained sword strikes at dawn, spell control before breakfast, stealth during lunch, archery after class, and healing until midnight. It only made the problem clearer. Logan reached E rank on the 3rd day. I killed the same number of training monsters and filled 10 bars to 9%. My sword aura was too weak to cut paper. My fire spell could warm tea if the tea was patient. My summoned bone crow collapsed whenever it tried to flap both wings. Even my equipment hated me. The academy issued gear according to class. Because I had 10, the quartermaster refused to choose and handed me the damaged leftovers from every rack. A cracked short sword, a bow with one good limb, a dented shield, a robe with burned sleeves, and a suit of practice armor so heavy I could barely turn around. Harper saw me dragging the pile across the yard and asked if I planned to fight a dungeon or open a junk shop. She had awakened Mechanist, a trap and device class that most combat students considered support work. Her fingers were always stained with oil, and she wore copper wire around one wrist like jewelry. Before I could answer, she picked up my broken bow, tested the tension, and said the good limb could become a spring launcher. That was the first useful thing anyone had said about my classes. The Academy's placement trial began the next morning inside the glass maze, a shifting field of transparent walls beneath the East Tower. We were supposed to gather crystal tokens while avoiding F-rank hounds. Logan entered with a polished saber and lightning dancing around his boots. I entered wearing the dented armor because tank was the only class whose first skill did not require a weapon. The armor turned out to be a trap of its own. Every step sounded like a cooking pot falling downstairs. Students passed me before I reached the first corner. By the time I found a token, Logan's score had already climbed into double digits. Then the maze changed. The walls rotated, cutting the class into isolated lanes. That was normal. The black veins spreading through the crystal were not. A hound leaped through a wall that should have blocked it. Its glass body was twice the expected size, and a dark shard pulsed where its heart should have been. I raised my shield. The hound struck, and tank brace locked my feet to the floor. The shield held. My shoulders nearly did not. A second hound appeared behind me, then a third. I could survive one direction, but tank brace made it impossible to turn quickly. Through the wall beside me, Harper was hanging upside down from a broken maze panel. Her wire trap had caught her ankle, and the largest hound was climbing toward her. I canceled tank brace and tried to run. The armor dragged me backward. Assassin's first skill, Shadow Step, appeared in my mind like a cruel joke. It gave one burst of speed, but it was designed for light clothing. The warning said heavy equipment would reduce acceleration by 90%. 90% was not 100. I activated Shadow Step and Tank Brace together. The 2 badges flashed, and the system tried to make me both immovable and impossibly fast. For one painful heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the stone beneath my boot exploded. I crossed the lane like a fired cannonball. The armor did not become lighter. Assassin speed dragged all of its weight with me. I hit the climbing hound shield first, smashed through it, continued through a rotating glass panel, and landed under Harper just as the wire snapped. She fell onto my helmet. I could not see. My left knee had forgotten how knees worked, and all three hounds were turning toward us. Harper slid off my head and stared at the tunnel I had punched through 2 walls. "Do that again," she said. I told her I would prefer to remain in one piece. She pointed at the broken panels. The maze was repairing them from the edges inward. If we timed it correctly, the walls could trap the hounds for us. Harper tied copper wire between my shield and 3 crystal hinges. I limped into the center lane, lifted my cracked sword, and made enough noise to attract every corrupted hound nearby. They charged. I used Shadow Step for less than half a second, then activated Tank Brace before the acceleration ended. My body stopped. The dented shield did not. It tore free, pulled Harper's wires, and snapped 3 walls shut like jaws. The hounds crashed into the closing panels. I stabbed the dark shard in the nearest chest with my cracked sword, and all of them shattered together. Blue sparks poured into me. 10 experience bars rose by exactly the same amount. That detail mattered more than the victory. I had used assassin and tank, yet swordsman, mage, healer, and every other class still received equal shares. My penalty was automatic, but perhaps my skills did not have to remain separate just because the badges were. Grant found us beside the corrupted remains. He examined the dark shard and said nothing in the maze should have possessed it. Before he could collect it, the shard dissolved into smoke. Far above the maze, a thin man in a gray coat stood behind the observation glass. I only saw him for a moment. Pale hair, calm eyes. One hand pressed against the window as if feeling the vibration of my 10 badges. Then he stepped back and vanished. I finished the trial with 3 tokens, 1 ruined shield, and the second worst score in my year. The worst score belonged to Harper because she had spent half the trial helping me weaponize the architecture. Logan advanced another level. My 10 bars reached 14%. Everyone laughed when the rankings appeared. I laughed too, because they had not seen what I had seen. The next day, I requested every unwanted assignment the Academy offered. If I needed 10 times the experience, I would take 10 times the danger. Grant rejected the first 6 requests. On the 7th, he looked at the dark scar that the corrupted hound had left on my shield and approved a night practicum in the memorial crypt. Harper volunteered before he finished explaining it. The crypt lay beneath an old district flooded by a burst underground river. We descended by rope into a chamber where marble statues rose from black water. Our task sounded simple: recover 5 memorial seals and remove any restless bones. Grant warned us that the dead were weak but numerous. He also warned Harper not to build explosives in a historical site. She asked whether that rule included very small explosives. The first skeleton rose before Grant could answer. I summoned my bone crow, hoping the creature could scout above the water. It appeared in a puff of gray light, flapped 1 wing, and fell into my hands. Half its ribs were cracked from the glass maze. Summons normally restored themselves between calls. Necromancer creations did not. Dead material remembered damage. I tried minor heal out of frustration. Green light touched the crow, and the skeleton screamed without lungs. A rib dissolved. The spell treated undead energy as poison. Harper leaned closer. A faint gray thread connected the crow to my necromancer badge, while a blue thread linked it to summoner. I had created the crow through one class and owned its remains through another. The healing spell was entering from outside both. In the maze, I had not asked assassin speed to make my armor lighter. I had forced speed and mass to coexist. Here, I needed healing and undeath to agree on who the patient was. I activated Tamer Bond and felt the crow's condition as a living handler would feel an injured beast. Cold pain stabbed through my ribs. Then I routed minor heal through that bond, while holding the necromancer command thread. The green light turned silver. The crow's missing rib grew back in polished bone. Its cracked wing snapped straight. It hopped from my palm, circled my head, and landed on Grant's shoulder with enough confidence to steal a button from his coat. Grant stared at it. Harper stared at me. I stared at the 3 badges glowing together. The crypt erupted. Skeletons climbed from every flooded passage. Some wore rusted ceremonial armor. Others were barely hands and skulls dragged by black mist. I called them with Necromancer's F-rank claim, but my control limit was 4. Harper solved that by wiring loose bones into complete frames. I claimed the skulls, summoned blue threads through them, and let the crafted frames follow like puppets. The result was the least dignified rescue squad in Ashfall history. One skeleton had arms of different lengths. Another rolled on a memorial cart because we could not find its legs. Harper gave the third a shovel. My repaired crow flew ahead and shared its sight through tamer bond. Whenever a skeleton broke, I healed it. Whenever black water hit a seal, the shovel skeleton dug. We collected 4 seals without destroying another corpse. The 5th chamber contained the plague wraith. It had no stable body, only a mass of smoke filled with faces. Grant's summoning chains passed through it. Harper's wire traps corroded on contact. The wraith entered one of my skeletons and took control from inside. I severed the command thread before the corruption reached me, but it jumped into the next body. We could not strike it while it remained smoke, and every body we offered became its weapon. So I offered it the best body possible. Harper reinforced the rolling skeleton with every clean bone in the room. I repaired it until silver light poured from its joints. Then I withdrew my control and sent it rattling toward the wraith, with the 5th seal tied around its neck. The wraith saw an empty vessel saturated with my energy. It swallowed the bait. The instant its smoke entered the bones, I reconnected Necromancer Claim, activated Tamer Bond, and cast Minor Heal with both hands. Healing energy flooded a creature that was undead, possessed, mine, and not mine at the same time. The skeleton repaired past perfection. Bone grew over bone. Silver cracks spread across its chest as life energy packed into material that had no flesh to receive it. The wraith tried to escape. Harper's wires pulled tight and locked the reinforced ribs around it. I kept healing. The skeleton burst like a silver sun. Every face inside the wraith became peaceful for one instant before the smoke vanished. The shockwave emptied water from the chamber and dropped the 5th seal at my feet. The experience reward filled the crypt with blue light. My bars climbed together, still painfully slow, but 3 new combination notices appeared in the corner of my vision. The system did not name the techniques. It merely recorded that simultaneous class principles had produced valid results. Grant finally spoke. He said no healer should be able to restore undead, no tamer should bond with bone, and no F-rank student should be smiling after nearly detonating himself in a tomb. I told him the smile was because my theory worked. He replied that this was exactly what worried him. Behind the broken altar, my crow found a corpse that did not belong in the memorial records. A dark mark had been carved beneath its collarbone, the same color as the shard in the glass maze. When Grant reached for it, I stopped him. A thread of smoke extended from the mark and disappeared through the ceiling. Someone was watching through the dead body. I should have destroyed it. Instead, I repaired the corpse just enough to preserve the mark and placed it among my claimed skeletons. If the pale-haired observer wanted to study my combinations, I could choose what lesson he received. Far above us, the smoke thread tightened. For the first time since awakening, I was no longer trying to catch up. I was setting bait. Leaving the memorial crypt turned out to be harder than defeating its wraith. The moment I decided to keep the marked corpse, every exit sealed. Black water rose through the floor grates, carrying hundreds of pale hands. The smoke thread above the corpse tightened like a fishing line. Silas could not control my claimed undead directly, but he could pull the void mark embedded in its flesh. The corpse lurched toward the flooded passage. If it escaped, we lost our bait. If I held it through Necromancer Claim, the mark could trace the command back through my badge. Grant ordered me to release it and destroy the body. I pretended not to hear him over the screaming bones. Harper dropped the corpse onto the memorial cart and locked its wrists beneath the frame. I claimed only the cart's loose bone decorations, not the marked body itself. Blacksmith Material Sense treated the wheels and braces as one mechanism. The corpse pulled. The cart rolled. My class thread never touched the mark. We followed it. Silas thought he was retrieving his observer. Instead, his own signal became our guide through the sealed lower crypt. The cart descended a ramp beneath the plague chamber. Flood water reached our waists. My repaired bone crow flew ahead with silver light shining through its ribs. Grant summoned stone cats along the walls, but their paws slipped on algae. Harper tied them to the cart as living anchors. At the bottom, we found a burial reservoir larger than the academy courtyard. Thousands of memorial masks floated on the surface. Each mask represented someone whose body had been lost in a dungeon. The void mark pulsed, and every mask turned toward us. Black water rose inside them like faces. The plague wraith had not been the source. It had been pressure leaking from this reservoir. Silas's marked corpse had disturbed a grief spirit formed from generations of unfinished burials. Grant told us not to attack. The spirit carried too many identities. Destroying it would release every fragment into the city above. The masks began whispering the final thoughts of the dead. Some called for family. Some repeated battle commands. Others only expressed fear. Tamer empathy opened before I could stop it. Thousands of endings entered my mind. I dropped to one knee. The grief spirit was not hostile in any simple way. It wanted bodies to complete the rituals those people had never received. Silas's corpse looked like an empty vessel. Every fragment rushed toward it. The body swelled with black water. Harper's restraints snapped. Grant's stone cats pinned the corpse. but memorial faces crawled across their bodies. If all the fragments entered one void-marked vessel, Silas would gain a reservoir of dead memories powerful enough to poison the entire district. I had 4 controlled skeletons, 1 crow, and a cart with decorative bones. Necromancer claim could provide bodies, but nowhere near enough. Summoner could create temporary forms, but the grief fragments would remain trapped when the summons vanished. Blacksmith did not require a body to be born. It required material to be shaped for a purpose. I pulled every loose memorial object from the water: cracked masks, rusted nameplates, broken urns, ceremonial wire, and carved stone hands. Harper understood immediately. She emptied her tool bag and began building frames. We did not need thousands of perfect bodies. We needed thousands of places where one memory could finish one motion. Harper strung masks along wire figures. Grant's cats carried nameplates into rows. I used blacksmith material sense to connect each fragment to an object carrying the same emotional resonance. A frightened memory entered a shield. A final battle command entered a broken spear. A parent's unfinished farewell entered 2 masks tied together. Then I applied necromancer claim across the constructed memorial field. The system resisted. Most objects had never been alive. I overlapped summoner's idea of a temporary vessel with blacksmith's idea of a purposeful shape. Tamer empathy matched each wandering fragment to one frame. Healer energy repaired cracks so the memories would not leak. One by one the objects stood. An army of tiny memorial figures filled the reservoir. Some had mask faces and wire arms. Others were only nameplates walking on stone fingers. None were warriors. They repeated the final actions their dead had wanted to complete. One bowed. One embraced another frame. One planted a broken spear and sat beside it. 100 walked toward the burial altars. 1,000 simply looked upward as if seeing dawn. The whispers softened. The grief spirit released the marked corpse. Silas pulled harder. The body shot across the water toward a black gate opening in the reservoir wall. I needed to keep it without connecting my necromancer thread. My bone crow seized the corpse's collar. It was far too small to stop the pull. I cast minor heal through tamer bond, overfilling the crow's repaired wings with silver force. At the same time, Harper hooked the memorial cart to its legs. The crow became a bright, furious engine dragging an entire cart through the air. The corpse moved sideways. It missed the void gate and struck a burial column. Grant's stone cats closed around it. Harper dropped a copper cage over the mark. The smoke thread passed through metal, so I fired a hollow arrow into the column and wrapped the thread around its shaft without touching it. Then I used mage heat on the arrowhead. The void thread tightened against glowing steel. It did not burn, but the heat traveled along it like a signal. For an instant, a distant room appeared inside the gate. Silas stood there surrounded by glass shards from the academy maze. He had built models of my first combination, testing angles and impact. Beside him were maps of Red Canyon, the vertical forest, and the foundry. He had already planned 3 more experiments. Our eyes met through the thread. I pulled the arrow free. Harper snapped the copper cage shut. The gate vanished, leaving the marked corpse in our hands. Grant had seen the room too. He finally understood why destroying the mark would waste our only path into Silas's planning. He approved keeping the corpse under sealed observation, though he insisted the decision had been his. Harper and I agreed with the solemn expressions of students who absolutely did not agree. The memorial figures completed their motions and returned to the water. Their masks floated face up now. The black reservoir became clear enough to show stone steps leading toward the surface. Before we climbed, I noticed one small figure remaining beside the altar. It had a mask with no name and carried a broken wooden sword. When I approached, it tapped the sword against my 10 badges, one after another. The badges flashed in sequence, but the experience reward did not divide normally. Each class received a memory of the others performing the ritual. Swordsman learned the patience of healer. Blacksmith learned the care of tamer. Necromancer learned that preserving purpose mattered more than commanding a corpse. The gain was tiny. The principle was enormous. Experience did not have to mean killing monsters. My classes advanced when they fulfilled what they represented, even through one another. The nameless figure placed its broken sword beside my cracked practice blade and dissolved into clear water. We emerged from the crypt at dawn. Grant carried the sealed corpse. Harper carried 3 memorial mechanisms she claimed had followed her voluntarily. My bone crow rode on my shoulder, fully repaired and missing Grant's stolen button because it had traded the button to a memorial figure for a silver nameplate. Students waiting above expected the tenfold failure to return injured and empty-handed. Instead, 4 skeletal rescue workers climbed out behind me carrying every recovered seal. The memorial ward accepted them. My 10 experience bars rose another fraction. Still F rank, still laughable on paper. Grant canceled my next combat assignment and scheduled the quarry ladder compatibility test. He wanted controlled evidence before allowing me near another public trial. As the crypt doors closed, the copper cage around Silas's mark rang once. Far away, the smoke thread began moving toward Red Canyon. Silas believed he had hidden his next experiment from us. We had already seen the map. Grant did not allow me to take the marked corpse directly into another public exam. He locked it in a salt chamber beneath the academy and ordered a full compatibility assessment of my 10 classes. According to him, discovering one impossible combination in a crypt did not prove I understood it. It proved I was willing to explode historical remains until something worked. Harper argued that the historical remains had improved. Grant remained unconvinced. The assessment used the quarry ladder, an old training dungeon cut into 7 descending shelves. Each shelf tested a different combat role. A normal team brought a defender, striker, healer, ranged fighter, controller, scout, and crafter. Grant sent me alone. If my 10 badges were truly useful together, I had to reach the bottom without changing equipment between shelves. He allowed Harper and Logan to watch from the observation lift. Harper carried a notebook. Logan claimed he only came because the lift had a good view of the next canyon exam. The first shelf released a swarm of needle bats. My archer skill could track one target at a time. Mage fire could hit several, but the flame was weak. I summoned the bone crow and attached 3 hollow practice arrows across its wings. Through tamer bond, I saw the swarm from above. Through archer focus, I marked the bats from the crow's moving view. Then I cast 1 F-rank flame into the air current behind it. The crow flapped. Its wing-mounted arrows split the flame into 3 narrow fans. Instead of becoming stronger, the spell became wider and better aimed. Every bat flew into heated air, lost lift, and landed harmlessly in the sand. Summoner provided position. Tamer provided sight. Archer provided targeting. Blacksmith provided the arrow mounts. Mage provided 1 cup of fire that acted like an entire net. 4 badges produced 1 weak attack that solved the shelf perfectly. The second test filled the passage with yellow poison. Healer's cleanse could remove poison from one body, but not from air. Tank's breath hold lasted 20 seconds. I could sprint through with assassin speed, but heavy armor reduced the burst, and the shelf was longer than my range. I cast cleanse on the bone crow. The spell formed a green field around its ribs. Then I sent it ahead while Mage Wind pulled poisoned air through the field. The crow became a flying filter. Necromancer ownership kept the healing pattern attached to bone, and Tamer Bond told me when the corruption became painful. I repaired the crow at the halfway point and walked through clean air behind it. Harper stopped taking notes long enough to stare through the lift glass. The third shelf contained a charging stone ram. The obvious answer was tank brace. I wanted another. I forged 2 curved plates from broken mine rails, attached them to a summoned hound, and used Tamer Bond to guide it past the ram. The creature followed, struck the curved plates, and redirected its own charge into the exit seal. I never touched it. The 4th shelf was supposed to test healing under pressure. 3 wooden mannequins displayed different injuries, while arrows fired from hidden slots. I could save 2 before the 3rd timer expired. Instead, I claimed the carved wooden frames as crude dead material with necromancer. The badge objected because the mannequins had never lived. Blacksmith material sense recognized them as constructed bodies. I overlapped the definitions just long enough for minor heal to treat cracks in the wood as broken bones. All 3 stood at once. The system awarded the healing objective, then displayed an error symbol so confused that Harper drew a smile on it through the observation glass. On the 5th shelf, the dungeon stopped behaving like a training course. Black veins spread through the quarry wall. The same void residue from the glass maze emerged beneath the test mechanisms. Observation windows turned opaque. Grant's voice vanished. Stone doors sealed above and below me. The marked corpse was still beneath the academy, but its smoke thread had led someone to our next destination before Grant isolated it. Silas had prepared the quarry in advance. The floor broke. I fell past the 6th shelf into an unlisted chamber. A mineral spider waited below, its body made from crystal ore and abandoned weapons. F-rank assessments did not contain a monster that large. Its front legs pinned my folding armor before I could stand. Black venom entered through the shoulder hinge. Minor heal closed the puncture but left the venom. Cleanse pushed the poison out, but the spider injected more. Tank brace held its fangs away from my neck. Shadow step could free me, but combining full acceleration with an immovable stance would reproduce the maze recoil while poison already weakened my channels. The spider's crystal abdomen contained moving shadows. Silas was watching from inside it. He wanted to measure the combination again. I gave him a different result. Instead of using shadow step on my body, I claimed 1 broken dagger embedded in the spider as blacksmith material and treated it as assassin equipment. The skill's description said it accelerated the user's equipped weapon during a killing approach. It did not say the weapon had to remain in my hand. I activated shadow step through the dagger. The blade ripped itself from the spider's abdomen at assassin speed. Crystal cracked outward. Black smoke spilled from the wound. I summoned the bone crow inside the opening. Its healing field pulled venom from my body through the same necromancer thread that connected us. Mage wind drove the poison into the spider's cracked core. Tamer bond let me feel the creature's panic and predict which leg would move. I released tank brace for half a second, rolled beneath that leg, and locked my defense again with the spider standing over me. Then I used the creature as armor. Arrows from the damaged training shelf began firing through the chamber. They struck its crystal shell. The spider turned to escape. I remained braced beneath it, forcing it to drag my immovable weight while every trap targeted us. Stone joints fractured. The monster collapsed around me like a broken cage. I healed the bone crow one final time. Silver energy overloaded the venom collected in its ribs. The crow released it as a green burst through the spider's core. The creature shattered without my sword touching it. The black smoke gathered into Silas's face. He said nothing. He had expected me to repeat speed with defense. Instead, he had learned that I could apply a movement skill to equipment and treat poison as transferable material. That was more information than I wanted to give him, but his silence told me something too. He did not know the combinations in advance. He needed experiments. Every trap was a question. I intended to make my answers increasingly expensive. Harper broke through the observation wall using the lift's emergency brake as a hammer. Logan followed in a sheath of lightning, cutting the sealed door before Grant reached us from above. By then, the danger had passed. Logan looked at the shattered E-rank spider, my 10 F-rank badges, and the wooden mannequins marching in a circle because I had forgotten to release them. He asked whether anything about me followed normal rules. I pointed out that my experience still followed the worst one. The reward divided 10 ways. Each bar rose only slightly, yet the compatibility record displayed 6 valid cross-class events and no prohibited conflict. Grant could no longer dismiss the maze or crypt as accidents. He approved my canyon convoy assignment under 3 conditions. Harper would inspect my armor, I would report every combination recoil, and the marked corpse would travel beneath the convoy as controlled bait. Harper immediately retrieved her spring hammer. Logan volunteered to lead the front escort. He said he wanted to observe the bait. I suspected he wanted to see whether the weakest student in his year could make another impossible result look deliberate. By dawn, the supply wagons were waiting at the mouth of Red Canyon. Beneath the last wagon, our salt-wrapped corpse watched through a thread of black smoke. This time, we were watching back. The marked corpse rode beneath the canyon convoy in a supply crate, wrapped in enough salt cloth to make any sensible necromancer embarrassed. I wanted our watcher to believe I had failed to notice his spy. Harper wanted to attach a spring-loaded hammer to it. We compromised by placing the hammer above the crate and promising to use it only if the corpse moved. The convoy exam sent 30 students along a road carved into the Red Canyon. 6 wagons carried illusionary civilians, medicine, and fragile power cores. We earned points for delivering them, lost points for every damaged passenger, and failed immediately if all 3 bridges along the route collapsed. Grant assigned me to rear defense. My armor was now even heavier because Harper had riveted the least damaged pieces into one folding shell. She had built hinges at the shoulders and hips so it could open while I ran, then lock around me when I braced. In theory, this solved the problem of assassin speed fighting tank weight. In practice, the armor folded me inside it twice during testing. Logan led the front escort. He had already reached high E rank and could split a boulder with a lightning stroke. He did not mock my bronze badges anymore, but he still believed raw power would decide the exam. When a pack of canyon lizards appeared on the ridge, he launched himself ahead of the wagons and cut through them before the rest of us drew weapons. The applause lasted until the first bridge exploded. Stone dropped into the ravine. The lead wagon stopped with its front wheels over empty air. At the same time, horned scavengers rushed the rear, and a sandstorm rolled down from the eastern cliffs. It was too coordinated for random monsters. I opened the marked corpse's crate. The smoke thread pointed directly toward the storm. Our observer had followed the bait. The rear wagon driver panicked and turned sideways, blocking the road. Scavengers closed from behind. If I stayed in tank brace, I could protect one wagon. If I used shadow step without armor, I could reach the bridge but would have no way to hold it. Harper slapped both latches on my folding shell. The armor opened like steel wings. I triggered shadow step while the plates hung loose, gained speed before their weight settled, and yanked the closing cable. The armor snapped around me in motion. Then I activated tank brace sideways. Instead of stopping, I became a wall traveling faster than a horse. I hit the scavenger line's shoulder first. The first monster bounced into the second hit the third, and the entire pack flew from the road in a chain of surprised horns. My boots carved twin trenches through the stone. When the burst ended, the combination recoil struck both legs at once. I had 12 seconds before I could use either skill safely again. 12 seconds was a long time in a collapsing canyon. I summoned 2 bonehounds from the crypt and equipped them with hooked harnesses Harper had forged. They ran beneath the lead wagon, caught the axles, and pulled it backward. My crow carried a line across the gap. Harper used it to anchor a wire bridge while Logan sliced falling rock above us. We saved the wagon with 1 wheel left. Then the entire canyon moved. The sandstorm was not weather, it was the breath of a leviathan sleeping beneath the road. Logan's lightning had struck a buried horn while he attacked the lizards. A head the size of the Academy Hall rose through the second bridge, showering the convoy in red stone. Its scales were layered sandstone. Its mouth opened beneath us like a tunnel to somewhere worse. Logan did what powerful students often do when fear arrives before thought. He attacked harder. Lightning split the Leviathan's face. It did not injure the creature. It made the creature notice him. When the Leviathan lunged toward the lead wagon, my cooldown still had 7 seconds. I could not block that mass, even with tank brace, so I stopped thinking like a tank. Summoners did not need their creatures to survive. They needed them to appear in the right place. Once I sent 1 bonehound sprinting across the third bridge with the marked corpse strapped to its back. The smoke thread stretched toward the storm, and the Leviathan's blackened eye followed the void mark. Whatever Ichor had awakened it recognized the same energy. The creature changed direction. My hound leaped from the bridge. The Leviathan followed, smashed through the canyon wall, and exposed a buried river channel. Millions of gallons of water erupted into the ravine. Harper screamed at me that this had not been part of the plan. I told her it had not been part of the canyon either. My cooldown ended. I accelerated an open armor, locked it around myself, and struck the cracked base of the third bridge. Tank brace transferred my momentum into the stone rather than letting it throw me forward. The bridge rotated on its broken pillar and fell across the new river like a ramp. The convoy raced over it while the Leviathan thrashed below. Logan remained on the wrong side. He had emptied his mana into the creature and could no longer jump the gap. The Leviathan's tail rose behind him. I had enough strength for 1 shadow step, but tank brace was still recovering. If I crossed in heavy armor, I would reach him and continue straight into the cliff. Harper fired the spring hammer we had mounted over the corpse crate. It launched a coil of wire past my shoulder. I caught it, tied one end to my folding armor, and told her not to let go. Then I ran. Shadow Step pulled the armor across the ramp. I grabbed Logan as the tail struck. Harper's wire reached full length, tore the outer plates from my hinges, and swung both of us around the cliff instead of through it. We slammed into the last wagon under a rain of red dust. The Leviathan disappeared into the river. A thin ribbon of black blood remained on the broken bridge. Before Grant could reach it, the blood flowed uphill toward the sandstorm, gathered into a floating vial, and vanished through a dark oval in the air. Inside the oval stood the pale-haired man. He raised the vial in acknowledgement. His lips formed one word I could not hear. Adrian. He knew my name. The gate closed. We completed the exam with all 6 wagons, 29 illusionary civilians, and no bridges remaining in their original positions. Logan received the highest combat score. Harper received the highest rescue score. I received a written warning for converting Academy infrastructure into a projectile. More important, the crowd at the finish line did not laugh when I arrived. Students had watched me cross a canyon in armor that should have made assassin skills useless. My 10 badges were still F rank, but weakness had become harder to explain. Logan found me in the infirmary that evening. He placed his polished saber on the bed and admitted that I had saved his life. Then he immediately added that he would have escaped somehow. I said I was sure the falling bridge would have admired his confidence. He almost smiled. The combination had torn energy channels in both legs. Healing closed the damage, but Grant warned me that repeating the same overlap too quickly could cripple me. The restriction appeared on my status, 12 seconds between full assassin acceleration and tank immovability. I had found a powerful trick, and our enemy had watched me use it twice. That meant I needed a different trick before he returned. The vertical forest trial supplied the problem. Its arena consisted of enormous trees growing from floating islands. Students hunted crystal-winged creatures by traveling along vines and wind currents. To prevent swordsmen from dominating at close range, the rules forbade carrying melee weapons beyond the starting platform. My cracked sword remained locked at the entrance. I received 12 ordinary arrows and the repaired bow Harper had turned into a compact launcher. Logan entered on another island, still limping from the canyon. Grant watched from the control tower. Our target was a sky stag whose antlers produced E-rank wind crystals. Capturing it would give enough experience to push a normal student through an entire rank. For me, it would produce 10 modest disappointments. The hunt began, and the stag bounded upside down along a branch high above me. I fired. My arrow missed by several feet. Archer skill improved my aim, not the bow's warped limb. The stag vanished into silver leaves. Harper was not participating, but she had prepared my arrows. Each shaft was hollow, with a narrow channel from the notch to the steel tip. She claimed the design could carry spell energy. I tried pushing mage fire through one. The arrow burned before I released it. Then I remembered the sword I was forbidden to carry. Swordsmen did not require steel to create sword aura. Steel merely gave the aura a shape. An arrowhead was a blade with a very long handle and terrible balance. I drew the string, formed a thread of pale aura around my fingers, and fed it into the hollow shaft. The arrow began to hum. When I released, Archer Guidance stabilized the flight while the spinning tip pulled sword aura behind it. The shot cut through 3 hanging vines and carved a silver line across a distant trunk. I had fired a sword stroke from a bow. The second arrow carried less aura and more control. The stag dodged, but the remote slash clipped a black hook embedded in the branch behind it. The hook broke, releasing a pulse of void energy. All around the forest, similar hooks lit up. The stag was not fleeing students. It was protecting 2 young hidden inside a nest of silver leaves. Each time it approached them, a hook sent pain through its antlers and drove it toward the hunters. I activated Tamer Bond. The stag's terror struck me so hard I nearly fell from the branch. Beneath the fear was a clear picture: pale hair, a gray coat, and careful hands pressing black hooks into living bark. The man from the canyon had prepared this trial too. I sent the memory through my bone crow to Grant, but the control tower windows turned black. The hooks had isolated the arena. Students continued hunting, unaware that every attack pushed the stag closer to its young. Logan cornered it on a narrow air bridge. Lightning gathered along his saber. One clean strike would win the trial, and probably advance his class again. I fired an aura arrow at him. The shot curved in the wind and cut his belt instead of his body. His supply pouch dropped. Logan turned toward me with an expression that promised future violence. Then he saw the 2 young beneath the bridge and stopped his attack. I needed to remove 37 hooks before their charge peaked. Straight arrows could hit perhaps 9. Sword aura could cut several targets if they aligned, but the forest bent in every direction. Mage wind gave me the missing angle. I fired one hollow arrow into an upward current, wrapped it in sword aura, and pushed the wind against its fletching. The arrow curved around the central tree. Archer perception let me feel its path. Each time it passed a hook, I pulsed the aura outward. One arrow became a flying sword stroke that circled the arena. Hooks shattered in sequence. Black sparks filled the forest. The strain drained archer, mage, and swordsman reserves at once, and the arrow began to wobble after the 25th target. Logan understood without being asked. He struck a branch with lightning, changing the local wind current. The arrow caught the new path and climbed. It cut the final hook. The sky stag stopped running. For a moment, every student stared at it. Then the entire forest convulsed. The broken hooks released their stored energy into a black sphere above the nest. A face appeared inside it, the pale-haired man, clear enough now for us to see his calm smile. He introduced himself as Silas. He said he had spent years proving that classes were cages. One person received a sword, so the world demanded that person solve every problem with a sword. Another received healing, so the world decided where that person would stand forever. He called my awakening an accident, with the potential to break every wall between those cages. Then he said he needed to know whether I would break first. The sphere fired a beam at the nest. I had no arrows left. Logan was too far away. I jumped from my branch, summoned the bone crow beneath me, and used Tamer Bond to borrow the sky stag's sense of the wind. The crow could not carry my weight, but it could change where I fell. We glided across the gap as the beam descended. I landed between the beam and the young with no shield. Tank brace required a defensive stance, not a physical shield. I crossed both arms and activated it. The branch shattered. My body did not move. The sky stag lowered its antlers beside me. Wind gathered around its body and bent the beam just enough for Logan's lightning to split it. The sphere burst, but a thin needle of black energy shot from it into my ring of badges. For one cold second, all 10 experience bars aligned into a single pattern. Silas had not attacked me. He had taken a sample of their shared resonance. The stag carried me, its young and Logan back to the starting platform. It refused the Academy's capture seal and accepted mine instead, not as a summon, but as a willing bond. A silver feather-shaped mark appeared beside my tamer badge. Grant suspended the trial and searched the control tower. Silas had never entered it. Every action had traveled through the void hooks. He had predicted where I would stand, what I would protect, and which combination I would reveal. I had gained a sky stag, aura arrows, and an ally where a trophy should have been. Silas had gained something I did not yet understand. That night, the Academy bells rang for the Founders Festival. Lanterns rose above the city. Students crowded the streets. The great foundry opened its doors to display enchanted weapons from every class tradition. My bone crow landed on the dormitory window and dropped a black hook onto my desk. It was hot. From beneath the festival music came the sound of every furnace in the academy igniting at once. The first explosion lifted the foundry roof without breaking it. Iron beams rose into the night, hung in a cloud of orange sparks, and dropped toward the festival crowd. I called the sky stag from its silver mark. Wind burst through the dormitory window and carried me across the courtyard. Logan arrived beneath the falling roof as a streak of lightning. Harper came through the front gate, driving a maintenance cart she had definitely not been authorized to borrow. We did not have time to discuss ownership. Logan cut the first beam in half. The pieces were still large enough to crush 20 people. I fired 2 aura arrows through them, slicing each half into thinner sections. The stag's winds spread the fragments like harmless black rain. Harper drove her cart beneath the last beam, raised a crane arm, and redirected it into the empty fountain. Then the foundry doors burst open. Creatures made of soot and broken weapons poured into the street. Each had a hollow circle in its chest and too many jointed limbs. A student cast fire at one. The creature's circle swallowed the spell and grew brighter. Logan struck another with lightning. It absorbed that too. Grant landed beside us with 3 summoned stone cats. He called the monsters null choristers, constructs mentioned only in sealed records. They consumed the shaped energy of class skills. The more refined the skill, the better the meal. That meant Logan's advanced class made him their favorite food. One chorister opened its chest and returned his lightning as a black arc. I used tank brace to block it, but the energy crawled over my arms and pulled at all 10 badges. The construct was not draining mana. It was chewing on the idea of my classes. I stopped every active skill. The black arc vanished. Harper rammed the creature with her maintenance cart. Metal struck metal. No class-shaped energy. No magical pattern. The chorister bounced through a lantern stall and did not get up. We had found the rule. We just needed to fight an army of skill-eating monsters without using skills. The foundry supplied the answer. I entered through a broken sidewall. First-year blacksmith students were trapped on the upper gantry while choristers climbed toward them. Furnaces burned white below. Chains, ore carts, cooling tanks, and unfinished weapons filled the floor. Every object was dangerous before magic touched it. Harper and I divided the room without speaking. She seized the assembly controls. I used blacksmith's material sense for 1 second, learning which chains were strong and which rails were ready to crack. Then I canceled it before the choristers could taste the skill. Knowledge remained after the badge went dark. I released an ore cart down the main rail. Harper switched the track. The cart struck one chorister, carried it into a second, and dumped both into a cooling tank. Logan pulled students from the gantry using ordinary ropes. Grant's stone cats stayed still until choristers passed beneath suspended ingots, then bit through the release cords with real teeth. We were winning with gravity, heat, and industrial carelessness. Then the central furnace opened. A chorister taller than the building pulled itself from the fire. Its body contained dozens of stolen weapons, and the hollow circle in its chest burned with every skill used against the smaller creatures. It inhaled, drawing the magic from enchanted tools across the foundry. Swords dulled. Runes went black. Grant's summons cracked and collapsed. My bone hounds remained because necromancer claim held actual bones together. Their blue summoning threads vanished, but their physical frames did not immediately fall. I grabbed a hammer and entered the forge line. Blacksmith skill would feed the giant if I left it active, so I used material sense in blinks. One glance showed the heat of a metal plate. Badge off. One tap revealed a fracture. Badge off. I worked between the creature's breaths, stealing fragments of knowledge while denying it a continuous pattern. Harper rolled pieces toward me on the assembly belt. I forged without enchantment, hinged jaws for the bonehounds, steel claws for the stone cats, counterweights for the crow, and a broad lance fitted to the sky stag's chest harness. None of it glowed, all of it hurt. The giant chorister reached the trapped students. I sent the equipped summons forward. The crow dropped a counterweight onto its head. The bonehounds clamped steel jaws around its ankles. Grant's cracked cats climbed its back with forged claws. The sky stag drove the mundane lance through the hollow circle in its chest. The lance could not destroy the stored energy, but it held the circle open. Harper reversed the furnace vents. The giant inhaled a river of unshaped heat. Class skills had patterns it could consume and return. Furnace pressure had no badge, no rank, and no intention. The chorister's chest swelled until seams opened across its body. I threw my hammer through the circle. The physical impact broke the release valve Harper had welded to the lance. Every stolen skill exploded upward. A column of black light pierced the roof and painted 10 symbols across the clouds. The giant collapsed into a mountain of cold weapons. The remaining choristers stopped fighting. Black smoke left their bodies and flowed toward a figure standing on the highest chimney. Silas looked down at the ruined festival. He congratulated me for fighting without the powers I was so desperate to evolve. Then he opened a void gate beneath the captured smoke. Grant hurled a summoning chain. Silas allowed it to wrap around his wrist. For one hopeful second, we had him. Then the chain turned black. Silas pulled, not against Grant's strength, but against the class pattern that created it. Grant's summoner badge flickered. The chain dissolved, and he dropped to one knee. Silas said the null choristers belonged to the hollow choir, an order that had spent generations studying the moment classes awakened. He believed society had mistaken convenient labels for destiny. His solution was simple and monstrous. Erase every class, destroy the advantage of advanced awakenings, and let only adaptable people survive what followed. I told him releasing monsters into a festival did not look like liberation. He replied that cages rarely opened without someone getting cut. Before he left, he looked beneath the foundry floor. My badges reacted. Something buried deep under the academy pulsed in the same 10-part rhythm. Silas called it the first crucible. The gate closed. One damaged chorister remained alive. Academy wardens pulled a masked operator from inside it, a frightened hollow choir member abandoned by Silas. The operator knew little, but one phrase survived every question. The first crucible could return all awakened power to silence. Grant sealed the foundry and took us below it. An ancient staircase descended farther than the academy foundations. At the bottom waited a circular door marked with 10 empty symbols. Grant explained that the academy had been built over the first known evolution shrine. Most people considered that a legend. Silas clearly did not. When I placed my hand on the door, all 10 symbols lit. The doorway opened for me alone. Grant ordered me to wait while the instructors studied it. I stepped through before he completed the order. Silas had attacked twice and stolen something both times. Waiting meant giving him the next move. The door closed behind me. I entered a round chamber containing an iron colossus and one inscription: "Endure until the path opens." The colossus punched me through a wall. My folding armor saved my ribs. Tank brace saved the rest. I rose, fired an aura arrow into the giant's eye, and watched the shot flatten against its face. The chamber absorbed my attack and made the colossus faster. I tried summoned hounds. It crushed them. I tried fire. The spell warmed its chest. I tried shadow step and discovered there was nowhere to run in a circular room. Each attack drained my tiny mana reserve. Tank brace could keep me alive, but the exit showed no sign of opening. Endure did not mean wait. It meant use what endurance produced. Every impact entered my shield, traveled through the tank badge, and vanished as heat in my muscles. Defensive skills did not erase force, they distributed it. Mage spells transformed mana into heat, wind, or light. If I could treat stored impact as a magical input, the Colossus could pay for the attack that destroyed it. The next punch came. I braced, but this time I opened my mage channel at the instant force spread through my arms. Pain became blue light. The spell burst inside my armor and threw me across the room. I had converted something, but without direction. My inner channels felt cracked. The Colossus approached for another strike. I folded the armor's shoulder plates inward, shaping them like a funnel. Harper had built the hinges to release weight. I used them to guide energy instead. The Colossus punched my shield. Tank brace caught the impact. Mage conversion drew it through the funnel. This time the blue light collected above my palm in a spinning point. It was not free power. My bones still absorbed everything the conversion failed to catch. But the Colossus had given me more energy in one strike than my F-rank mage reserve could hold. I fired it back. The defensive star punched a glowing hole through the giant's shoulder. The chamber shook. An inner door appeared, then faded. One strike was not enough. So I made the Colossus angrier. I shot its knee with an ordinary arrow, ran between its legs, and struck the floor behind it with my cracked sword. The attacks caused no damage, but each forced it to turn. I planted bone hounds along the wall as targets. The giant crossed the chamber, building momentum. When it charged, I stood before the entrance door and raised my dented shield. Its fist hit with the weight of the entire room. Tank brace screamed through every nerve. Mage conversion ignited. Blue-white energy filled my armor, crawled across the folding plates, and formed a star larger than my body. My mana channels split like dry wood. If I held the power, it would cook me. If I released too early, it would scatter. I used archer focus to choose a point, swordsman grip to give the energy an edge, and blacksmith material sense to find the fracture from my first shot. Then I fired defense. The star became a narrow blade of light. It crossed the chamber, entered the Colossus's damaged shoulder, and exited through its chest. The giant stood still. Cracks spread from the wound until the whole body fell apart in glowing iron blocks. The inner door opened. Beyond it waited a chamber with 10 statues, each showing the final evolution of one of my classes. The swordsman held a blade made of distance. The mage wore a storm like a cloak. The assassin stepped between shadows. The healer restored a dead forest. The summoner commanded a horizon of creatures. The tank carried a mountain. The archer aimed beyond the stars. The blacksmith forged a living sun. The tamer stood among ancient beasts. The necromancer guided an army whose eyes were peaceful rather than enslaved. Lines of light connected every statue to a single empty throne. An inscription appeared beneath it. 10 beginnings, 10 conclusions, 1 authority. I understood. The classes were not meant to merge while incomplete. Every one had to reach its final evolution. My divided experience was not merely a penalty. It kept them advancing at the same pace so none would arrive too early. For the first time, I saw a destination beyond F rank. Then a void gate opened behind the throne. Silas stepped through, holding the resonance he had stolen from the forest. He pressed it against the 10 statues, and a hidden map rose from the floor. Evolution shrines appeared across the region like stars. I attacked with the last strength in my legs. He did not fight me. He let my aura arrow pass through his coat and reveal that the body was only smoke. The projection smiled. Silas had never needed to defeat the chamber. He only needed me to open it. The map folded into the void gate and vanished. I tried to follow. My cracked mana channels collapsed. The defensive star inside my armor flashed out of control, and I fell beneath the empty throne. Grant found me hours later. Harper had built a brace around my chest before I woke. Logan stood at the door pretending he had not spent the entire night there. The first crucible had given me a path to Omni-Sovereign, though I did not yet know the name. It had also given Silas every location he needed to stop me. Outside the academy, bells began ringing from the market district. This time, people were not calling for help against monsters. They were screaming because their class badges had gone dark. The silence in the market district felt wrong before I crossed the gate. A city full of awakened people always carried small signs of magic. Bakers used controlled flame. Couriers used speed skills. Builders lifted stone with summoned hands. Now ovens smoked, carts had overturned, and a half-finished tower leaned over the central avenue. Gray mist crawled between the buildings. The instant it touched me, all 10 badges vanished. My folding armor became ordinary metal. The sky stag's mark went cold. The bone crow dropped from the air and landed in a fruit stand. Around me, people stared at empty wrists as if their hands had disappeared. Silas had refined the Leviathan Ichor into a class suppression fog. The leaning tower cracked. I could not use tank brace. Logan could not cut it with lightning. Grant could not summon anything large enough to catch it. Harper looked at the broken base, pointed toward 3 cargo cranes, and started giving orders. That was the moment she stopped being the person who helped with my plans, and became the person whose plans saved mine. Logan climbed the nearest crane by hand. Grant organized civilians into rope teams. I used blacksmith knowledge to identify the tower's remaining load points. Material sense was gone, but I had spent weeks learning how metal bent. Skills had taught my hands, and the fog could not remove memory. Harper linked the cranes with counterweight cables. We pulled as the tower fell. It rotated just enough to land across 2 empty warehouses instead of the avenue. The impact blasted fog outward and exposed black canisters on nearby rooftops. Masked hollow choir enforcers guarded them with crossbows. They had prepared for helpless awakened citizens, not for stubborn people who remembered what stairs were. I took an ordinary bow from a market stall. Without archer guidance, the grip felt less certain, but my posture remained. I shot the release rope beneath the first canister. It rolled from the roof and knocked 2 enforcers into an awning. Logan reached the second rooftop, discovered that his saber still had a sharp edge without lightning, and persuaded 3 more to surrender. The fog thickened at the south gate. A medicine convoy had stopped there, surrounded by panicked animals and overturned wagons. Choir enforcers were quietly replacing the medicine crates with black canisters. Their masks carried recording gems. This was not only an attack, it was an experiment. Silas wanted to see how quickly society failed when classes disappeared. I also wanted him to see something. We spread a rumor that Grant was escorting the last active healing relic through the district. Harper rebuilt 1 medicine wagon with hollow walls and placed memory crystals inside. Logan removed his academy coat and pretended to be an injured driver. Grant sat in the back holding an ordinary green lantern. I walked beside the wagon in my heavy armor, making sure every rooftop observer could see how slowly I moved. The choir took the bait. They attacked in the narrow lane beside the old bathhouse. Crossbow bolts struck the armor. Without tank brace, each impact hurt, but the plates Harper had physically forged still held. The suppression mist could cancel the skill that made armor effective. It could not unmake steel. I fell on purpose. 6 enforcers rushed the wagon. Harper pulled a cable from inside the bathhouse. Steam pipes opened beneath the street, blasting away the mist. My badges returned for less than 2 seconds. 2 seconds was enough. Shadow Step carried my steel-covered body through the attacking line. Tank Brace locked at the end. The recoil tore open my healing wounds, but every enforcer landed inside the empty medicine wagon. Harper shut the walls around them. The fog rolled back, and my badges vanished again. The trap was already physical. No skill could open it from within. Memory crystals recorded their masks, their canisters, and their orders to poison civilian medicine. When the city wardens regained their classes at the edge of the district, we handed them the evidence and the living attackers. Silas had been careful to appear only through smoke before. Now his followers had faces and crimes that could survive a courtroom. The captured leader laughed when Grant asked where Silas was. He said Silas expected us to win. At sunset, the fog canisters shut down on their own. A projection appeared above the market fountain. Silas had measured evacuation speed, badge recovery time, physical skill retention, and my willingness to expose my combination cooldown for strangers. He thanked us for completing the test. The enforcers shouted that he would rescue them. Silas looked at them without emotion and closed the projection. He had abandoned his own people because their capture produced useful data. That told me more about him than any speech about freedom. Among the confiscated equipment, Harper found a route etched into one canister. It led to the Walking Mountain, a continent-sized tortoise whose shell carried a mobile dungeon. One of the evolution shrines from the Crucible map moved with that creature. Silas had included the route because he wanted me to chase it. I went anyway, but I refused to arrive the way he expected. The Academy expedition boarded the Walking Mountain by airship 3 days later. From above, its shell looked like a forested island. Rivers flowed between the ridges. Villages stood on ancient plates. With each step, the horizon tilted. The evolution shrine lay inside a tunnel near the creature's heart. The normal route required defeating shell beasts and claiming their keys. I used Tamer Bond from the moment we landed. The first tunnel beast resembled a 6-legged mole covered in crystal armor. Instead of attacking, I offered it a reinforced digging claw forged from spare anchor steel. It tested the claw, dug through a wall that had resisted Academy tools for years, and called 12 relatives. By midday, I had an excavation crew. Harper designed harnesses that let the moles carry lanterns and rope. My blacksmith skill adapted each harness to its wearer. Summoner threads allowed me to call equipment back for repairs, without dragging the beasts away. We bypassed 3 monster nests and reached a chamber full of enormous white parasites attached to the tortoise's inner shell. The creature's pain entered Tamer Bond as a pressure behind my eyes. Those parasites were why it had changed course toward a populated coast. Killing them recklessly could rupture blood channels large enough to drown villages on its back. Logan wanted to strike each parasite with controlled lightning. I showed him the black hooks beneath their bodies. Silas had planted them. If shocked, they would discharge void energy into the tortoise's heart. We needed to cut away the parasites without touching the hooks or the living shell. I armed the tunnel moles with curved shields. Bone hounds climbed onto their backs wearing hooked cutting frames. My crow marked each parasite from above. Then I fired aura arrows through the chamber. Mage wind curved the arrows around blood channels. Sword aura extended from the tips in crescents. The moles used their shields to reflect the wind, changing each arrow's route a second time. One shot became a silver thread weaving through the entire infestation. Every parasite fell. Every hook remained untouched. The tortoise's relief nearly knocked me unconscious. Then Silas activated the hooks anyway. Black roots spread from them toward the heart. The chamber sealed at both ends. A void gate opened above us, and null choristers poured out. Silas had combined his earlier weapons, suppression energy in the roots, skill-eating constructs in the chamber, and a living hostage too large to move. This time, I had combined earlier answers too. My beasts wore physical tools. My undead could be healed. My arrows carried sword strikes. The tortoise itself supplied motion. Harper drove anchor spikes into the chamber floor. Each time the Walking Mountain took a step, gravity shifted. We timed our attack to that rhythm. On the downward tilt, the moles charged behind mundane shields, carrying bone hounds with forged jaws. On the upward tilt, I loosened summoner threads so every fighter slid away before the choristers could consume a skill. Logan used tiny lightning pulses against metal plates rather than monsters, turning the floor into a moving rail system. We fought like the chamber was a machine, and the tortoise was its engine. The black roots reached the heart membrane. I sent my repaired crow along them with the marked corpse's old salt cloth tied to its claws. Void energy recognized the residue and hesitated, treating the crow as one of Silas's observers. That gave me a path to the central hook. The crow could not break it. A tunnel mole could, but the route crossed open space filled with choristers. Logan looked at the ranking display projected above the expedition. The first student to touch the shrine would receive enough experience to claim the year's top position. He had chased that lead since awakening. He turned away from the shrine and planted himself in the corridor. Lightning filled his saber. The choristers would consume it, but he was not trying to hurt them. He made himself the brightest class pattern in the chamber. Every construct rushed toward him. I sent the mole the other way. Logan's badge dimmed as the choristers drained it. He kept fighting with ordinary steel, giving up the rank lead second by second. The mole reached the central hook and crushed it with the reinforced claw I had forged on our first meeting. The black roots died. The tortoise's heart beat once. The shock wave threw every chorister into the air. Harper reversed the anchor lines, and our equipped beasts pulled the constructs into a closing shell fold. Millions of tons of living armor crushed them without using a class skill. The evolution shrine opened. 4 symbols waited inside: Tamer, Summoner, Archer, and Blacksmith. I touched them together. Experience accumulated from every beast I had bonded, every summon I had maintained, every arrow I had guided, and every tool I had made. The 4 F-rank badges did not simply jump one rank. The shrine recognized that each class had fulfilled its complete principle through the others. My Tamer badge evolved into World Bond Keeper. Summoner became Legion Gate. Archer became Horizon Piercer. Blacksmith became Living Forge. Power flooded me. For the first time, some of my classes reached their final form. The divided experience in those badges stopped consuming shares. All future experience would flow among the remaining 6. My weakness had begun accelerating itself. The shrine released a wave of silver light across the walking mountain. Villagers on its shell cheered. Logan's ranking display dropped below mine, but he did not look at it. He looked at the tortoise's stable heartbeat and smiled. That was the moment our rivalry ended. It lasted exactly 11 seconds. Then a black mark appeared across the shrine floor. Silas had used our activation to brand the walking mountain's location. A void gate opened on the horizon, far larger than any I had seen, aimed toward Ashfall Academy. I could feel him moving through it with the stolen Crucible map. Grant ordered the airship prepared for immediate return. I stopped him. Chasing the gate would put us exactly where Silas expected. The marked canister, the hooks, and the abandoned enforcers all carried one repeated symbol: a broken bell. Harper found the same symbol on an old regional chart. An abandoned city stood beneath a field of stone bell towers, 2 hours east of the tortoise's route. Silas had opened his road to Ashfall. We were going to enter his home before he arrived. The shortest path to the Bell City crossed the Shiver Sea, where floating slabs of stone drifted above freezing water. Our damaged airship could make the trip in 2 hours if nothing attacked us. Since Silas had supplied the route, I assumed everything would attack us. We left the walking mountain under cloud cover. Grant killed the airship's magical lights, and Harper replaced the engine's glowing runes with a mechanical pressure drive powered by the moles turning an enormous wheel. It was slower, louder, and almost impossible for class-sensing devices to detect. The moles enjoyed it far more than the rest of us. Logan stood beside me at the bow. His Storm Duelist badge had recovered from the choristers, but his ranking remained below mine. He said he did not care. The fact that he announced this without being asked suggested he cared at least a little. The children from the Bell Sanctuary were not yet part of our plan because we had not found them. What we did find was a fishing village built across 3 floating stone slabs. Every boat was frozen in place. People waved emergency cloth from the roofs while a black tide moved beneath the ice. Grant wanted to continue. The sanctuary might notice any delay, and Silas was already opening his gate toward Ashfall. I looked at the marked village and understood the decision placed in front of me. Silas knew I stopped for rescues. He could create suffering along every route and control my pace. Ignoring the village would surprise him. It would also make me exactly like him. I ordered the airship down. The black tide contained ink eels, small dungeon creatures that ate enchanted heat. Every class-powered stove in the village had attracted them. The more healers and mages tried to warm the ice, the more eels gathered. Several buildings were already sinking from the weight. I could have blasted them with the defensive star. That would crack the floating slabs. Aura arrows could cut them, but thousands moved under opaque ice. Summoning larger creatures would only add weight. Harper tested the frozen mooring ropes and found that the eels ignored ordinary friction, so we gave them more heat than they could chase. The airship's mechanical engine had filled its pressure tank during the entire flight. Harper ran copper coils from the tank across the 3 slabs. Logan used one tiny spark to ignite a bucket of oil at the far end, then canceled his class. The coils warmed in sequence without emitting a spell pattern. The ink eels followed the moving heat. I bonded with the school at the center of the swarm. Tamer empathy did not give me words, only hunger, cold, and a simple instinct to surround warmth. I guided that instinct through the coils. The entire black tide formed a spiral under the ice, moving away from the houses. At the final coil, Harper opened the pressure tank. Steam exploded upward, melting a circular hole. The eels leaped toward it. Legion Gate caught them in mid-air and transported them into the empty ballast tank. Living Forge sealed the hatch with ordinary metal. We had captured enough enchanted heat eaters to shut down a city furnace, and not one village roof had collapsed. The village's oldest fisher showed us why the eels had gathered. A black bell lay beneath the central slab. Its ringing traveled through ice instead of air, attracting dungeon creatures and suppressing navigation skills. The hollow choir had planted it days earlier. When I touched the bell, my evolved classes reacted. It was tuned to the same erasure score Silas intended to play through the crucible. Each toll removed one layer of class perception. First direction, then distance, then ownership. By the 10th toll, a summoned creature would no longer remember who called it. Silas had not placed the bell merely to slow me. He was testing whether my growing combination network could be dismantled one relationship at a time. I asked Harper to leave it intact. She smiled in the alarming way she reserved for devices other people expected to remain functional. We suspended the bell beneath the airship and packed the captured ink eels around it. The creatures ate the enchanted vibration as heat. Every time the bell tried to suppress a class principle, its own signal warmed the tank and powered our pressure engine. Silas's trap became fuel. The villagers helped us rebuild the airship's torn fins with fishing spars. No one had a useful airship class. That did not stop them. By the time we lifted off, the mechanical engine ran twice as fast, powered by a black bell that rang only inside a tank full of hungry eels. We had lost 40 minutes and gained the only device capable of detecting the hollow choir's hidden score. That mattered when we reached the stone chimes. The region surrounding the Bell City distorted direction. Towers appeared close, then moved toward the horizon. Bridges repeated. The same broken statue passed beneath our hull 4 times. Grant's navigation summon flew in circles and insisted every direction was north. The captured bell grew warmer whenever we approached a true route. Its suppression note resonated with hidden anchors in the city. Harper connected 10 whistles to the tank, each tuned to a different principle. When a whistle sounded, I knew which part of our perception the maze was attacking. Distance vanished first. The nearest tower seemed to touch the bow. I fired an ordinary rope arrow toward it. The rope extended 200 yards, proving our eyes wrong. Horizon Piercer could see a perfect line, but trusting that class alone was exactly what the distortion expected. We followed the physical rope. Direction vanished next. The compass spun. Logan planted small lightning marks on passing rocks. Magic could be redirected, so Harper dropped weighted oil floats into the sea below. Their wakes showed our actual movement. Ownership vanished on the 3rd ring. My tunnel moles stopped recognizing their harnesses. The bone crow attacked its own counterweight. Summoning threads crossed until one skeleton tried to obey Grant and one stone cat tried to steal my boot. Instead of forcing command, I activated Tamer empathy and shared the memory of forging each piece of equipment. The moles remembered the feel of their claws inside the custom grips. The crow remembered stealing Grant's button. Physical habit restored the relationships the bell tried to erase. The distortion escalated through 7 notes. At the 8th, it separated cause from effect. Logan swung his saber and a sail tore behind him. Harper pulled a lever and the wheel turned 3 seconds early. My arrows struck before I released them. We could not steer through time arriving in the wrong order. Harper told everyone to stop moving. She released one ink eel onto the deck with a copper loop around it. The creature followed heat in the present, unaffected by our perception of cause. We warmed the left rail, waited for it to crawl there, and only then turned the ship. Each maneuver was confirmed by a living reaction rather than sight or timing. The 9th note removed the boundary between inside and outside. Cold seawater appeared across the deck though the hull remained sealed. Airship ropes passed through our bodies like smoke. The void distortion wanted us to open doors that were not real and fall through floors that were. World Bastion gave me the answer. Defense required deciding where my body ended, and danger began. I expanded that stance through Legion Gate, not as a shield, but as a shared outline around the entire crew. For 1 minute, our combined sense of touch defined the airship more accurately than the world did. We walked only where someone else felt solid wood. At the 10th note, my summons forgot me. The bone hounds turned. The sky stag's silver mark went blank. The tunnel moles abandoned the wheel. Even the undead stared with peaceful blue eyes and no command. I did not reassert control. I removed every summoning thread and knelt. Then I placed the reforged digging claw on the deck, the bone crow's repaired rib beside it, and the sky stag feather between them. These creatures had reasons to stay that existed outside ownership. The mole had received a tool. The crow had received healing. The stag had chosen me when I protected its young. The sky stag lowered its head first. The crow landed on my shoulder. The moles returned to their wheel. Bone hounds sat around me, no longer commanded, but willing. The 10th note broke. World Bond Keeper changed. Until then, I had treated Tamer and Summoner as ways to extend myself through other bodies. The distortion taught me the opposite. A true bond remained when control disappeared. The airship cleared the false horizon. The Bell City appeared beneath us, much larger than the chart suggested. Thousands of stone towers rose from black water. Bridges formed the shape of a broken circle. At its center, a column of void energy stretched toward the clouds. The road Silas had opened to Ashfall. Our mechanical engine began to fail. The captured bell had stopped ringing, and the ink eels no longer supplied heat. We could glide into the city once, but we could not fly out under pursuit. Harper opened the ballast tank. She fitted each eel with a tiny copper collar, then released them into the sea around the outer towers. Their hunger drew them toward the hidden suppression anchors. One by one, black bells beneath the water went dark. The distortion weakened behind us, creating an escape route that would remain open as long as the eels kept feeding. Grant guided the damaged airship into the shadow of a collapsed tower. Logan wrapped the bright edge of his saber in black cloth. Harper distributed the ceremonial shells we had forged from Carister fragments. I called repaired skeletons and placed them inside. The city rang the hour. Our captured bell answered with one final quiet note from the empty tank. It did not suppress anything. It pointed toward a chamber beneath the largest tower, where 10 black vibrations formed a song. We had reached the hollow choir's sanctuary, and Silas had no idea his own trap had guided us to the door. Landing inside the Bell City would have announced us to every tower, so Grant kept the damaged airship moving while we dropped onto an outer bridge. Harper, Logan, and I wore black ceremonial shells over our clothes. My skeletons carried identical shells and landed around us with their usual lack of grace. From a distance, we resembled a hollow choir patrol. From nearby, we resembled a hollow choir patrol accompanied by several people who had never practiced walking in robes. The first tower guarded the only bridge to the inner city. Its doors had no lock. 10 small bells hung above them. Each reacted to a different class pattern. Any awakened intruder would ring at least one, while a person carrying several skills could trigger the entire alarm. I could not suppress my 4 evolved badges completely. Even standing still made the tamer bell tremble because the ink eels moved beneath us. The blacksmith bell reacted to Harper's tools. Logan's lightning pulled the swordsman bell toward him. We needed to cross as people the ward considered empty. The marked corpse from the crypt had once carried a void signal without a class. Silas's traps ignored it because it belonged to his network. We no longer had the body, but my bone crow had spent days perched on it and retained a faint residue. I healed the crow through Eternal Regent's incomplete path, pushing silver repair light across every bone. The healing displaced the void residue as black dust. Harper collected that dust on 10 copper rings. We hung 1 ring inside each alarm bell. When our classes approached, the bells felt both an intruder and an authorized void signal. Their clappers pulled in opposite directions and remained silent. We crossed beneath them while the ward argued with itself. Beyond the tower, hundreds of narrow bridges webbed between the stone chimes. Choir patrols moved in pairs. They wore no visible badges and spoke through hand signs. Fighting one would ring the city. We joined their pattern, sending skeleton shells down parallel paths so nobody could count our group accurately. At the third crossing, a patrol stopped Logan. One guard touched the shell over his heart and made a sequence of 4 signs. We did not know the response. Logan looked at me from beneath his hood. Lightning gathered instinctively around his fingers, bright enough to expose us. Harper stepped between them and pointed at a loose bridge bolt. She removed a wrench, tightened it, then slapped Logan's shoulder as if scolding a lazy worker. The guard examined the repaired bolt, nodded, and repeated the sign more slowly. This time Harper recognized it as a maintenance request. She answered by holding up 2 fingers and pointing toward the inner tower. The patrol let us pass. Logan whispered that she had guessed. Harper said confidence was a language. The bridge beneath the next tower was alive. Stone ribs flexed under our feet. A giant bell-shaped creature clung upside down beneath the span, its mouth attached to the supports. Each vibration traveled into its body. The hollow choir had tamed it as a living alarm. Our shells fooled badges, not hunger. It sensed 12 sets of footsteps, where a patrol should have 2. The creature opened its mouth. I activated World Bond Keeper for less than a heartbeat. Its mind contained no words, only a map of vibrations. Heavy footsteps meant threat. Quick patterns meant prey. Silence meant safety. We could not walk across without producing weight, so we made 1 footstep. Harper linked every shell with a horizontal rod beneath the robes. At my signal, all 12 bodies stepped at exactly the same instant. The bridge received 1 broad impact instead of separate rhythms. The creature interpreted us as one enormous, slow patrol. We crossed 40 yards 1 synchronized step at a time. Halfway over, a skeleton's mismatched leg came loose. The rod tilted. Logan caught the shell before it fell, carrying the full weight with one arm while continuing the shared rhythm. The living bell shifted beneath us, suspicious. My crow landed on the opposite rail and tapped the same slow beat with its beak. The creature relaxed. At the far side, Logan returned the skeleton's leg. He said nothing about saving our infiltration with ordinary strength. I noticed anyway. The inner tower contained a workshop where choir members built black hooks. Harper wanted a closer look. We entered through a delivery gate behind two skeleton shells carrying an empty crate. Rows of artisans carved void channels into antlers, claws, weapons, and class badges taken from prisoners. Most workers used hand tools rather than skills. At the center, a machine tuned each hook to one of 10 erasure notes. Harper studied it through a crack in her hood. The machine did not generate suppression. It amplified a note received from beneath the city. That meant the true score was already being rehearsed somewhere below. I released a group of captured ink eels into the cooling trough. They followed the enchanted heat into the tuning machine and began eating its signal. Notes went flat. Finished hooks vibrated off their racks. Workers rushed to stop the malfunction while our shells carried 3 crates through the rear exit. Only one crate was empty. The other 2 contained prisoners too weak to walk. They wore suppression cuffs, and their class badges had been scraped until the symbols were barely visible. We could not ask questions without exposing ourselves. Harper broke the cuffs inside the shells while Logan supported both prisoners with rods hidden beneath his robe. The last bridge before the sanctuary ended at a bell with no visible passage. Patrols walked into its bronze surface and vanished. The black clapper struck once for each person. If we carried the prisoners through, the count would reveal 4 extra bodies. Legion Gate could move them, but the city wards would sense a portal. The ceremonial shells were connected through my summoner threads only loosely enough to imitate empty armor. I moved the people without moving their bodies. Genesis Saint spread healing through one prisoner, while Tamer Empathy carried the sensation of standing and walking into a skeleton shell. Eternal Regent accepted the second prisoner's fading intent and placed it in another shell for 3 seconds. Their bodies remained hidden inside our crates, but their awakened patterns crossed the bronze gate inside empty frames. The clapper counted the patterns, not the flesh. 2 skeletons walked through as prisoners. 2 crates passed as cargo. On the other side, I returned every pattern to its body and nearly collapsed from the strain. The prisoners showed us a mark scratched inside one cuff, a child's drawing of a cage beneath the main sanctuary. The workshop did not hold everyone. Silas kept younger captives below the city where their awakening patterns could be tested repeatedly. Grant sent the rescued pair back along our silent route with 4 skeleton escorts. We could not evacuate them by airship without revealing its position. But the ink eels had disabled enough outer bells to open the sea passage. One prisoner gripped my sleeve before leaving and pointed toward the central tower. 10 black lights pulsed beneath it. Between the 9th and 10th pulse came a faint cry. Silas was rehearsing his erasure score over imprisoned children. The careful infiltration stopped being an investigation. It became a rescue with an investigation hidden inside it. Harper tightened her tool belt. Logan uncovered his saber but left the lightning off. Grant summoned 3 stone cats inside ceremonial shells. I distributed my senses among every undead body and released the bone crow toward the highest bell. We joined the next procession descending beneath the central tower. 20 sets of borrowed eyes opened around me as we entered the hollow choir sanctuary. The abandoned Bell City had no streets at ground level. Buildings hung between stone towers, connected by bridges that swayed whenever the wind moved through thousands of cracked bells. The hollow choir had chosen a place where every footstep became music and every intruder announced himself. So I did not enter. I sent the dead. Harper built thin ceremonial shells from carister fragments. Each looked like a black-robed pilgrim from a distance. I placed repaired skeletons inside them, hid their bones behind metal joints, and linked my senses through Tamer Bond. Legion Gate allowed me to maintain dozens of summons now, but splitting vision among them made the world feel like a broken mirror. One shell crossed the western bridge. Another climbed beneath the eastern aqueduct. My bone crow nested in the highest bell. A tunnel mole entered through a collapsed water channel. I sat 2 miles away with Harper, Logan, and Grant inside the airship wreck we had used for cover. Through 20 sets of eyes, I entered the hollow choir sanctuary. Its members were not an army of faceless monsters. They were awakened people whose classes had failed them, or who believed they had. Some had weak crafting badges. Some carried rare combat symbols. All wore broken circles over their hearts. They trained by suppressing their own skills and fighting with simple weapons. Silas's idea had grown from a real wound that made it more dangerous, not less. My shells followed a procession beneath the largest tower. At the bottom, I found children locked in chambers lined with suppression stone. Their badges flickered painfully. Choir researchers were testing how long young awakenings could survive erasure waves. Logan felt my anger through the team link and reached for his saber. I told him to wait. We needed the crucible key and the full erasure plan before we revealed ourselves. The main sanctuary contained a platform shaped like the empty throne beneath Ashfall. Silas stood before it with the stolen map rotating above his hand. He was younger than Grant and older than any student, with pale hair tied at his neck and a gray coat cut by old scorch marks. There was no projection between us now. He addressed the choir without shouting. Years earlier, his family had been trapped in a dungeon collapse. A tank held the entrance because that was his assigned role. A healer stayed behind the tank because that was hers. Swordsmen attacked the monsters in front of them. Nobody knew how to reinforce the failing ceiling because the only structural blacksmith had been evacuated as a non-combatant. Silas watched rigid training turn capable people into pieces that could not move beyond their labels. He survived by awakening Voidwalker and cutting a gate through the rubble. His family did not. He concluded that classes made weakness permanent. If every badge vanished, people would be forced to learn everything. I understood the first half. My entire rise had come from refusing to stand where a class label placed me. But Silas had taken the lesson and removed the people from it. He did not want freedom. He wanted a disaster large enough to prove that he had been right. Above the platform, 10 black notes formed an erasure score. When played through the first crucible, it would broadcast suppression across the region. The effect would not be temporary like the market fog. It would burn class patterns from every awakened soul. I guided the bone crow closer. Its counterweighted claw lifted a memory crystal and copied the score line by line. Silas stopped speaking. He looked directly at the crow. I severed the visual link before he could trace it, but the other shells were already compromised. Bells rang across the city. Choir members surrounded the sanctuary exits. Silas's voice traveled through every tower, telling me that a person with 10 classes should have learned not to divide his attention. He had mistaken division for weakness. I activated all the shells at once. One tore down a bridge chain. Another opened the prison vents. The tunnel mole broke through the children's floor. Bone workers hidden in ceremonial robes threw Harper's smoke gears into the bell mechanisms. Instead of ringing alarms, the towers began playing a chaotic rhythm that masked our movement. The real team entered on the Sky Stag. Logan leaped into the central sanctuary. Grant summoned stone cats across the bridge network. Harper landed beside the prison controls and turned a choir winch into a rotating escape platform. I remained connected to every shell, directing a battle from 20 bodies while firing aura arrows from my own. Silas moved between void gates. He never attacked the same place twice. One moment he cut Grant's summoning threads. The next he opened a gate beneath Logan's feet. Then he redirected my own arrow toward the prison. I curved the shot with mage wind before it struck, but that required more of my divided attention. Silas was testing the limit he had predicted. The erasure score rested behind him. The imprisoned children were escaping in the opposite direction. I could chase one. Silas expected me to choose the children. He had studied every rescue from the glass maze onward. His prepared exit gate was already opening behind the score. So I let him believe the choice worked. I sent my own body toward the prison. At the same time, a ceremonial shell that had fallen during the first alarm crawled beneath the platform. Inside it, a skeleton hand detached from its arm, climbed the final step, and closed around the memory crystal containing the copied score. Silas took the original. I kept the duplicate. He saw the hand as his gate closed. For the first time, his calm expression broke. He still escaped with the crucible key, a black shard that could tear the entire shrine from beneath Ashfall. I could have followed through the narrowing gate. Instead, I used Legion Gate to move every freed child to the airship, while Grant collapsed the bridge behind us. Silas's escape was not an accident. It was the cost of choosing lives over pursuit. But I had made that cost buy something. The copied erasure score revealed his next move. To activate the first crucible, he needed 10 final class resonances. He planned to steal them from evolution shrines across the Storm Archipelago. The shrines were designed for 10 specialists and normally opened once each century. The resonance he stole from me had awakened all of them at once. We reached the archipelago beneath a sky filled with sideways rain. 10 islands circled a permanent cyclone. Each shrine imposed a trial shaped around one class principle. The Swordsman Island required cutting an endless waterfall. The Mage Island demanded containment of living lightning. Assassin required crossing a field where every shadow faced the wrong direction. Healer contained a forest dying faster than one person could restore it. Tank held a mountain that rose with every breath. The remaining islands tested pursuit, command, aim, creation, and death. My 4 evolved classes responded immediately. The other 6 trembled on the edge of their final paths. Silas's void ships appeared around the cyclone. We did not have time to complete the trials one after another. The shrines had to be solved simultaneously before he harvested their resonance. One person could not stand on 10 islands. One body did not have to. I placed a summon at every shrine, equipped tunnel beasts at tamer and blacksmith, bone archers at archer, the sky stag at summoner, my crow at assassin, and repaired skeletons at the rest. Tamer bonds shared their senses. Legion Gate carried skill effects through summoning threads. I sat on the central island and closed my eyes. The world became 10 worlds. At the swordsman shrine, a bone worker held my cracked practice sword. At mage, the crow flew inside a sphere of lightning. At tank, 6 tunnel moles braced beneath a rising stone. At healer, silver threads spread through dead roots. My mind divided until I could no longer remember which body was mine.
And nine.
Harper sat before me with 10 mechanical clocks. She called timing in a steady voice. Logan defended the central island. Grant moved between gateways, reinforcing whichever trial began to fail.
Then go.
The waterfall could not be cut by strength. Each slash opened for an instant and closed. I fired an aura arrow upward through the falling water, then held sword aura along its path. The arrow became a zipper. At Harper's count, the bone worker pulled the cracked sword downward, connecting the slash from both ends. The waterfall divided around the island. Swordsman reached its final evolution. Boundary blade. The living lightning at mage grew stronger whenever contained. Tank conversion provided the answer. I let it strike the moles bracing the mountain, carried the absorbed impact through Legion Gate, and fed it back into the lightning sphere as magical structure rather than energy. The storm built its own cage. Mage evolved into Aether Dominion. Tank evolved into World Bastion. At Assassin, every false shadow watched the crow. I stopped hiding it. The bird flew into open light while a detached skeleton hand moved beneath the feather-shaped darkness it cast on the ground. The shrine tracked the visible creature and missed the hand that carried my intent. Assassin evolved into Zero-Step Reaper. The healer forest died in waves. Restoring leaves wasted power. I connected its roots to my undead network and treated the entire forest as one owned body. Necromancer claim resisted because the trees were not dead enough. I allowed the outer grove to fall, preserved its memory in bone seeds, and healed inward from the root heart. The forest returned in silver bloom. Healer evolved into Genesis Saint. 9 symbols blazed around the cyclone. The remaining trials collapsed into light because my 4 earlier evolutions already fulfilled them. Only Necromancer remained dark. Its island contained a single empty grave and one command: offer a willing life, then preserve its purpose. Grant opened a gate beside the grave. He said the trial had appeared in ancient records. Every known Necromancer evolution required sacrifice. He was already old enough to have chosen his students over himself many times, and he believed this choice should be no different. I refused. The shrine did not change. Silas's void ships entered the cyclone. Black beams struck the islands. Logan cut the first apart, but another opened above him. Grant summoned a wall of stone cats and blocked it. The impact threw him across the central platform. Harper's clocks shattered. My 10 linked trials fell out of rhythm. The tank mountain slipped. The healer forest burned. The assassin shadows closed around the crow. Maintaining 9 completed evolutions while resisting the 10th tore through every thread in my body. Grant rose despite blood covering one side of his coat. He opened a gate to the outermost island, where Silas had placed a void beacon. Destroying it would stop the ships from locking onto our network. It would also leave Grant outside the protective formation. I ordered him to stay. He reminded me that I was still his student, which was a ridiculous argument during the end of class civilization. Then he stepped through. Grant's summons swarmed the beacon. Silas redirected every ship toward him. Logan tried to follow, but a void wall separated the islands. Harper repaired one clock with shaking hands and shouted the final count. I synchronized 9 classes. Sword aura split the beams. Mage lightning crossed the gaps. Tank force held the islands. Healer roots bound them together. Assassin shadows carried commands. Archer shots severed ship anchors. Blacksmith constructs repaired the shrines. Tamer beasts moved through the storm. Summoner gates formed one enormous ring. Grant destroyed the beacon. The explosion swallowed his island. Our network completed. 9 final badges locked into place. The cyclone opened above us like an eye. Necromancer remained F rank. I pulled Grant through Legion Gate before the island disappeared. His body landed beside me, burned and motionless. Genesis Saint showed a faint heartbeat, but every healing spell slid off him. Something inside had already begun leaving. Silas's ships retreated toward Ashfall. He had lost the shrine resonance, but he still possessed the crucible key. He had forced me to choose between completing the final trial and saving Grant. I carried my instructor onto the sky stag. The empty grave followed us through the gate as a black symbol floating behind my wrist. Silas believed he had given me an impossible choice. He had forgotten that every important thing I had learned began when two impossible rules collided. The trip back from the Storm Archipelago began with 9 evolved classes, 1 dying instructor, and an enemy fleet directly between us and home. The Sky Stag carried Grant while Logan and Harper shared the airship. I remained connected to the fading shrine network long enough to feel Silas's ships arrange themselves across every safe route. He had lost the final resonances he wanted, but he understood that Grant's injury had become the center of my attention. 3 void cutters emerged from the clouds. Their hulls were narrow black blades designed to slice summoning gates. The first passed through Legion Gate before it fully opened and divided the portal in half. One side led to the airship, the other opened above the sea. My tunnel moles fell through both and barely caught the rails. Silas had improved his attack after the Bell Sanctuary. Distributed bodies were no longer enough. He was cutting the relationships among them. I fired aura arrows toward the cutters. Void gates bent the shots around the ships and sent them toward the Sky Stag carrying Grant. I cancelled sword aura, but the physical shafts continued. Logan struck them aside. Every offensive skill became a threat to the person I was trying to save. Harper climbed onto the airship wing with a coil of plain signal flags. She did not ask the system where the cutters would move. She watched their sails. Void ships still needed air pressure after they emerged from a gate. Each time a sail tightened, she raised a color. Red meant a cutter would climb. Blue meant it would dive. Yellow meant a gate was about to redirect an attack. I closed my status and followed her flags. On red, the Sky Stag rose beneath a cutter instead of fleeing. On blue, Logan jumped from the airship and landed on its deck. On yellow, I fired no skill at all. I threw the marked black bell clapper we had kept from the Shiver Sea. Silas's gate opened to redirect magical energy. The ordinary piece of metal passed through unaffected and struck the gate anchor behind it. The portal collapsed around the cutter's wing. Half the ship vanished. The rest spun toward the ocean. Logan ran along the falling deck and jumped back to the airship with its navigation stone under one arm. The remaining cutters stopped attacking. They opened a wide gate in front of us. Through it, Ashfall Academy burned under a red sky. It was an illusion, but not a simple one. The navigation stone showed the gate led toward home. Silas wanted us to cross quickly. The image included students on the walls and Grant's stone cats breaking apart in the courtyard. Grant woke long enough to see it. His summoner badge reacted, confirming that the cats were real. Silas had mixed a true connection with a false route. If we entered, we might reach Ashfall or the bottom of the abyss. If we went around, the real attack would continue while Grant died in my arms. I examined the erasure score copied from the sanctuary. Its 10 notes were more than a weapon. They were also coordinates, each tuned to the regional network beneath one evolution shrine. The note for summoner vibrated toward Ashfall because Grant's creatures were there. The void gate vibrated slightly east. The picture was real, the doorway was not. I aimed Legion Gate at Grant's connection rather than the space Silas provided. The cutter blades closed around us, ready to sever it, so I created 10 gates. 9 were empty circles carrying the final resonance of each evolved class. 1 held the true path. Silas's cutters attacked the brightest portals first. They sliced swordsman, then mage, then tank. Each false gate burst into the principle it represented. Sword aura cut one sail. Mage wind spun another ship. Tank force locked a cutter motionless in the air. The true summoner path remained small and dark beneath the airship. Harper drove the vessel straight down. We entered the gate sideways, scraping both wings. The Sky Stag folded around Grant. Logan cut the broken mast before it could pin us. 1 cutter followed. We emerged not at Ashfall, but inside the old forest north of the academy where Grant's weakest stone kitten summon had hidden beneath a root. I had targeted the smallest surviving connection because Silas would monitor the strongest. The airship crashed through 40 trees and stopped upside down. Grant's condition worsened. Genesis Saint could close every wound, yet his spirit continued separating from the body. Healing more aggressively only pushed the two farther apart. Eternal Regent had not evolved. An ordinary necromancer claim could not touch a living soul. The black grave symbol from the trial hovered over him, offer a willing life, then preserve its purpose. Logan said nothing. Harper stared at the words, then at me. The obvious solution waited like a knife. Accept Grant's sacrifice, gain my final evolution, and reach the academy with full power. I refused to choose while an enemy ship remained in the sky. The pursuing cutter descended beyond the trees. Choir hunters spread through the forest carrying suppression spears. They did not rush us. They formed a wide circle and began driving monsters inward. Grant needed stillness. Silas was giving me a siege. We moved him into an abandoned ranger station. Harper reinforced the floor. Logan took the northern trail. I released every beast and undead into the woods, then severed my control threads. The bell distortion had taught me that voluntary bonds survived better than forced ones. Under suppression, commands became targets. Habits became invisible. Tunnel moles dug pits where Harper placed flags. Bone hounds dragged dead branches across paths. The sky stag carried reflective plates into the canopy. No glowing network connected them. Each followed a plan learned before the hunters arrived. The first choir group entered from the west. They saw my apparently uncontrolled beasts wandering between trees. One hunter raised a suppression spear and fired at the sky stag. The reflective plates redirected the black pulse into an ink eel tank salvaged from the airship. Hungry shapes consumed its heat. The tank boiled, pressurized, and launched a piston beneath the trail. 3 hidden logs swung down and knocked the hunters into Harper's pits. The second group approached without using skills. They found bone hounds sleeping beside the ranger station and assumed necromancer control had failed. When they crossed the marked line, the hounds pulled ordinary ropes. Stone kitten statues fell from the trees. Logan's lightning remained hidden until the hunters raised their own badges. Then one thin arc connected every metal suppression spear and welded them together. The third group stayed aboard the cutter and aimed its blade at the station. I could block it with World Bastion, but Silas wanted me to reveal that defense while Grant lay behind me. Instead, Harper and I dismantled the crashed airship's pressure engine. Living Forge allowed me to understand the mechanism. Then I canceled the badge and assembled it physically beneath the forest floor. The cutter fired. The black blade crossed the clearing. Harper opened the buried pressure tank. A column of dirt and frozen ink eels erupted under the ship, tilting its anchor at the moment of discharge. The blade missed the station and cut the ground in front of it. The cutter opened its own grave. Tunnel moles collapsed the sliced earth. The ship dropped nose first into the trench. Equipped bone hounds locked chains around its tail. The sky stag pulled upward while the moles pulled down. The hull snapped along the same gate seam Logan had damaged in the clouds. We captured the crew alive. Memory crystals in their helmets contained Silas's orders. He had told them not to kill me. Their job was to keep Grant near death until I accepted the necromancer trial's sacrifice. Silas did not merely study my combinations anymore. He was trying to author them. I recorded a reply on the same crystals. I told him he had misunderstood the empty grave. That was mostly confidence. I still did not know the answer. But while Harper repaired a transport sled, I watched Grant's stone kitten curl against his hand. The summon continued guarding him even though Grant was unconscious and its active command thread had failed. Purpose could outlive control without becoming death. The insight was small, but the grave symbol trembled. I placed the kitten on Grant's chest. Its stone body carried the last command he had given before the beacon exploded: protect the students. That purpose was leaving him along with his spirit, but it had already been preserved in another being. I could not complete the evolution in the forest. The connection remained too weak, and Grant's body needed the Academy's healing chamber. Yet I finally understood that the trial did not demand murder. It demanded continuity. We loaded Grant onto the repaired sled and used the captured cutter's gate anchor to open a path toward Ashfall. I did not trust its coordinates. Harper tied physical cable through the portal first. Logan crossed while holding one end. When he pulled twice, we followed. The Academy appeared beyond the trees. Void gates hung above every tower. Null choristers filled the courtyards. Suppression mist covered the lower halls. The first crucible pulsed beneath the foundry like a black heart. The attack was worse than the image Silas had shown us. It was also late. By forcing us through the forest, he had given me the one lesson I needed to deny his chosen sacrifice. The sky stag lifted Grant. Harper armed the captured gate anchor to explode behind us. Logan drew his saber. My 9 evolved badges formed a silver ring around the empty necromancer symbol. We crossed the outer wall as the Academy began to burn. Ashfall Academy was already burning when the sky stag crossed the outer wall. Void gates hung above every tower. Null choristers marched through the courtyards while suppression mist filled the lower halls. Students fought without badges using the methods from the market rescue. Tables became barricades. Practice bows fired from windows. Blacksmith trainees rolled furnace carts down staircases. Silas had attacked the place where rigid class training should have made people helpless, and found an academy that had learned from me. I landed in the infirmary with Grant in my arms. Genesis Saint showed every injury at once. His skin was burned, 3 ribs were broken, and void energy had torn the link between his body and his awakened spirit. I could repair flesh. I could not command the fading purpose that normally told a healed body to live. The empty grave symbol appeared above him. Offer a willing life, then preserve its purpose. Grant opened his eyes for 1 second. He told me to use the trial. If his death completed my 10th evolution, I could save everyone else. I placed my hand over his summoner badge and told him he was a terrible instructor. Necromancers did not create death. Death happened without help. Their true power was the continuation of command after the body could no longer carry it. The shrine's wording had never said the willing life had to finish dying. It only demanded that the life be offered and its purpose preserved. Grant had already offered his life on the outer island. I claimed his battle intent at the instant it separated from his broken channels. Necromancer threads rose from his chest, not around his soul, but around the last command he had given his summons: protect the students. Stone cats across the academy lifted their heads. Though Grant lay unconscious, his purpose continued through them. Then I used Genesis Saint on the body he had left behind. Silver healing entered through Necromancer ownership. The same combination that repaired my bone crow now treated Grant's empty channels as undead structures under my care. Ribs fused, burns closed. The void tear narrowed. I held his battle intent outside him like a flame protected from wind, while his body rebuilt beneath it. When the heart was strong, I returned the flame. Grant inhaled. Every stone cat roared at once. The empty grave filled with white flowers and vanished. Necromancer evolved into Eternal Regent. All 10 badges had reached their final form. The ring around my wrist expanded. 10 symbols spun faster, pulling toward a center that had never existed. I expected the empty throne from the crucible to appear. Instead, each badge began dissolving. My skills went dark one by one. Before the merge could finish, the academy floor split open. Silas stood above the first crucible beneath the foundry. The black key in his hand had grown into a spear. He drove it into the ancient shrine and twisted. Stone foundations lifted. The entire circular chamber tore free from the earth with chains of void energy wrapped around it. Every gate in the sky pulled. Ashfall Academy fell downward. The ground beneath the campus became a black abyss. Towers, courtyards, bridges, and hundreds of students dropped together as if the world had opened a mouth. The first crucible descended at the center, dragging the academy behind it. My separate badges vanished completely. I had reached 10 final evolutions and become classless at the worst possible moment. Harper ran into the infirmary as the building tilted. Logan followed, carrying 3 younger students beneath his arms. Grant tried to rise, but the healing had restored his life, not his strength. I could still feel the merge happening somewhere inside me. I could not access it. Silas knew this. He had timed the theft for the instant all 10 patterns became unstable. The infirmary wall broke away. Below us, the academy was a storm of falling stone. I grabbed Harper's cable launcher with ordinary hands. Skills had disappeared in the market, and we had survived. This was the same problem with worse scenery. We fired cables into the adjacent tower and built a zip line for the injured. Logan carried Grant across. I opened Legion Gate by instinct and received nothing. Then I heard scratching beneath the floor. My tunnel moles were still there. Their summoning link had vanished, but the harnesses and training remained. Tamer power had changed their behavior. Suppression could not erase friendship. The moles tore an escape path through the wall. My repaired undead also remained. Necromancer commands were gone, yet Grant's preserved purpose still echoed through the network. Bone workers rose among the falling debris and held bridge cables in place. I healed them so many times that repair had become part of their physical structure. Silver seams locked whenever bones cracked. Every clever result of my classes had outlived the badges that produced it. We turned the collapse into a rescue machine. Harper took command from the broken bell tower. She mapped every falling section using mechanical pendulums because magical sensors had failed. Logan jumped between rooftops with no lightning, cutting cables at her count. Grant's stone cats carried children. My equipped beasts dragged whole classrooms onto the broad shell plates torn from the foundry. The first erasure wave rose from the crucible. It passed through the academy as a transparent black ring. Every remaining class skill died. Enchanted supports failed. A tower containing the first-year dormitory broke in half. I still had my hollow arrows. There was no sword aura to place inside them, but the channels could carry tension cable. Harper tied 3 lines to one shaft. I fired it through the tower's upper arch with the ordinary aim learned during suppression. Logan anchored the lines. The dormitory swung across the abyss instead of falling into it. The second wave shattered the bridge beneath us. My folding armor had no tank brace and no assassin speed, but its hinges still worked. I opened it into a broad gliding frame. The sky stag caught the underside with its antlers, and wind from the falling towers carried both of us toward the central courtyard. Silas stood there on a floating fragment of the crucible. He had expected panic. Instead, he watched unskilled students execute mixed rescue formations. He watched healers swing hammers, swordsmen reinforce walls, mages use ropes, and blacksmiths command evacuation lines. His attack had produced the adaptability he claimed only destruction could create. That should have stopped him. It made him furious. Silas opened a gate in front of the falling dormitory, and another above the abyss. He was no longer conducting an experiment. He was removing evidence that contradicted him. I launched myself from the gliding armor and struck him with the cracked practice sword. He blocked with the crucible key. My blade snapped halfway down, just as it had always threatened to do. Silas cut a gate across my chest. I twisted, but the edge tore through the armor and threw me onto a glass platform pulled from the original maze. He said the tenfold failure had finally returned to his correct rank. Nothing. Then a third erasure wave struck. For an instant, the merging power inside me opened. Tank force caught the wave. Mage instinct converted it. Blue light flooded my empty channels. I released a defensive star into the gate beneath the dormitory. The spell forced the portal sideways, and the falling building emerged above the safe shell platform instead of the abyss. My power vanished again, but Silas had seen it. He adapted immediately. Instead of erasing my skills, he began feeding me force. Void gates opened around the courtyard. Falling boulders entered from every direction and struck the invisible defense gathering around my body. Each impact became magic. The conversion-filled channels still unstable from the merge. Silas remembered the crucible chamber. He knew my technique could not create energy and that too much stored force would destroy me from inside. The first boulder gave me enough power to split a tower. The fifth made blood run from my eyes. The 10th turned my skin blue-white. I could discharge the energy, but Silas placed gates before every safe target. Any spell I fired would emerge among the students. He had transformed my strongest combination into a bomb that only I could contain. Harper saw the pattern from the bell tower. She fired 2 copper lines into my armor. One connected to the old foundry rail. The other crossed the abyss to Logan's saber. Metal formed a path from me to the exposed underside of the first crucible. Logan understood. He drove his blade into a suspended water pipe. Harper opened the valve. I released the stored force through the cables. The energy did not become a spell until it left my body. It traveled as distributed impact through the armor, entered the rail, crossed Logan's grounded blade, and exploded through the water as a web of harmless light. The students cheered as blue rain filled the abyss. Silas stared at Harper and Logan. He had studied my limits but continued treating every ally as an extension of me. Their solution belonged to them. I used the safe discharge to overload the void chains beneath the academy. 3 snapped. The western towers rose toward the surface, carried by emergency balloons Harper had released before the fall. Grant's stone cats severed another chain. The Walking Mountain's tunnel moles chewed through the anchor holding the foundry. Silas pulled the crucible deeper. The academy separated from it. Students and buildings drifted upward while I remained on the glass platform below. Harper threw a line, but a void gate cut it. Logan jumped. I fired the last physical arrow into his coat and pinned him to a rising wall before he could follow me. Someone had to stop the erasure waves at their source. The crucible swallowed Silas and me. Inside, the ancient chamber had transformed into the glass maze. Transparent walls stretched in every direction. Reflections showed the day of my awakening. 10 bronze F-rank badges, laughing students, broken gear, and a boy who thought his future had ended before it began. Silas walked through the walls as if they were smoke. He held the black key in one hand and the complete erasure score in the other. The copied score I had stolen burned against my chest, waiting for a way to reach the outside world. I had no visible class badge. My armor was broken. My sword was half a blade. Every experience point I had earned had disappeared into a merge that refused to finish. Silas raised the key. 10 black symbols appeared around him, each representing a class he planned to erase from millions of people. He asked what I could possibly combine now that I had nothing left. The answer came from the first lesson the glass maze had taught me. Nothing I had ever combined was supposed to work separately. The 10 symbols inside me touched. The merge did not give me 10 badges again. It gave me 1. A symbol formed above my heart. A circle containing a sword, staff, dagger, cross, summoning gate, shield, bow, hammer, beast eye, and peaceful skull. The shapes turned around one another without edges. Words appeared beneath it. Omni-sovereign. My experience had never truly been lost. Every divided fraction had trained 10 different ways of understanding power. At their final evolutions, those paths no longer needed separate reserves. Assassin speed was not a skill beside tank defense. It was the movement of one authority. Healing did not conflict with necromancer command. Both were decisions about what a body should become. Sword aura and arrows were not separate weapons. They were direction and edge. For years, ordinary awakened people climbed one tower. I had spent every battle building bridges among 10. Now the bridges became the ground. Silas drove the black key toward my chest. I did not dodge. World Bastion caught the point against my shirt. Zero-Step Reaper removed the distance behind the impact. Instead of pushing me backward, the force accelerated me forward around the key. I appeared beside Silas wearing all the mass of my defensive stance. My shoulder struck him. He flew through 7 glass walls. That was assassin speed with heavy armor, except I no longer needed armor. Defense itself had mass. Speed itself decided where that mass arrived. Silas opened a gate before he hit the 8th wall. He vanished, reappeared above me, and dropped the black erasure symbols like blades. I raised one hand. Aether Dominion converted the pressure caught by World Bastion into blue spell power. Horizon Piercer gave it a target beyond the walls. Boundary Blade gave it an edge. I flicked one finger. 10 sword arrows formed from the force of his own attack. They crossed the maze, entered separate void gates, and emerged around him from angles he had not opened. Silas twisted between them. 9 missed. The 10th cut the key from his hand. He did not panic. He had prepared for power. The key split in mid-air into thousands of black hooks, the same kind used on the Sky Stag and Walking Mountain. They buried themselves in every glass wall and pulled suppression mist into the chamber. My new badge flickered. Silas smiled. He believed one unified class gave him one target to erase. The mist closed around me, and Omni-Sovereign disappeared. I remained standing. Living Forge had already changed the broken plates of my armor. Before the badge vanished, I forged every fragment into small interlocking animals. They fell to the floor as ordinary metal pieces. Then the tunnel moles arrived through cracks beneath the maze, following the harness training they remembered. Each carried one piece. The bone crow landed on my shoulder. Its body no longer needed active command to recognize me. Behind it came hounds, skeleton workers, stone cats, and the Sky Stag. Some were living, some were dead, some were summoned structures that had gained enough physical history to remain. All wore weapons and tools Harper and I had made. Silas had spent months studying my classes. He had never understood my army. I raised the half-sword. The beasts attacked without magic. Tunnel moles broke hooks from the walls. Bone hounds dragged suppression canisters into piles. The crow dropped counterweights on void anchors. The Sky Stag used ordinary wings and antlers to throw Silas away from his gates. Silas cut creatures apart, but Genesis Saint flickered each time a patch of clear air crossed me. Silver healing flowed through Eternal Regent. Broken bones repaired. Torn harnesses reforged. The same soldiers returned faster than he could destroy them. He opened a gate beneath the entire army. I let them fall. Legion Gate awakened on the other side of the suppression cloud. The beasts emerged above him in a rotating formation. World Bond Keeper shared their positions. Horizon Piercer supplied aim. Living Forge changed every equipped tool in midair. Shovels became shields. Shields became wings. Wings became arrowheads attached to summoned chains. The army folded into one enormous projectile. I drew an invisible bow across the maze. Boundary Blade became the string. I fired. The equipped beast undead formation shot through the glass as a silver dragon made of bodies, armor, and blue command lines. It struck Silas, carried him around the maze, and smashed every black hook in one continuous orbit. At the final wall, the formation unfolded safely. Living creatures landed on their feet. Skeletons assembled themselves. The crow returned with another button torn from Grant's coat, which raised questions I decided to ask later. The suppression mist vanished. Silas rose from the broken glass with blood on his gray coat. His calm expression had become something sharper. He said the system had made me exactly what he feared, a single ruler over every class. I told him no system had taught Harper to turn cranes into rescue machines. No badge had forced Logan to abandon a ranking for a tortoise. No class trial had made Grant offer his life. My power worked because other people kept solving parts that did not belong to me. Silas called that dependence. I called it not being alone. He played the erasure score. Black notes filled the crucible. Outside, every awakened badge across the region would be connected to this pulse. I felt millions of class patterns trembling through the ancient chamber. Silas no longer needed to defeat me. If even one complete measure sounded, the erasure would begin. I carried the copied score against my chest, but broadcasting it would only prove what he intended after the damage was done. I needed to invert the song. The score contained 10 notes, one for each broad class principle. It erased them separately, the same way my old experience had been divided. Silas still saw the world as isolated lanes. I overlapped the first note with the second. Boundary Blade cut Aether Dominion's sound into an arrow. The third note tried to erase speed. World Bastion gave it mass. The fourth targeted healing. Eternal Regent declared the dying vibration a body under my care. One by one, I forced every erasure note to perform another class's function. The black song turned silver. Instead of deleting badges, it connected them. Across the falling academy, students felt one another's abilities for a heartbeat. Healers sensed structural fractures. Blacksmiths felt injured bodies as materials that could be supported but never owned. Tanks perceived evacuation routes as attacks to intercept. Archers saw lines through collapsing stone. The effect did not grant new skills. It showed every awakened person that their existing principle could reach farther than the label. Silas heard his life's work become the lesson he had refused to learn. He screamed and tore the score apart. The crucible destabilized. Glass walls lifted into a cyclone. Every reflection from my first trial became solid. Corrupted hounds, rotating panels, the collapsing lane where Harper had hung from a wire. Silas opened void gates among them, turning memory into weapons. One hound emerged behind me. Another attacked from above. Walls closed around the beast army. This was his final adaptation. He had rebuilt the place where my cross-class power first appeared, then given himself control of every exit. I knew that maze better than he did. The first time, I had won by allowing walls to close. I sent the sky stag down the central lane as bait. Silas opened 3 gates and surrounded it with glass hounds. The stag leaped. Horizon Piercer guided a sword arrow past its antlers and cut the same hinge Harper had wired during our first trial. One wall rotated early. The altered panel blocked a gate. Another gate redirected into a reflection. The copied void path struck itself and opened beneath Silas. He stepped aside, but Zero-Step Reaper had already removed the distance between us. I appeared behind him in the folding armor, now reforged from the interlocking animals. World Bastion made me immovable. Ether Dominion filled the plates with every impact the Crucible had stored since ancient times. Silas expected the defensive star. He opened gates around every safe discharge route, just as he had above the abyss. I did not fire. I used Genesis Saint to heal the cracked glass maze. Silver energy flowed through the walls. Eternal Regent claimed their broken purpose: test the awakened, protect the students, contain danger. Living Forge restored the hinges. World Bond Keeper treated the whole structure as one ancient creature. The maze came alive around us. All the converted force entered its panels. The walls moved. Silas opened a gate. The maze placed a wall through it. He cut another exit. Repaired glass sealed behind the cut. Every route he created became another hinge under my control. He had nowhere to send the energy because I was not attacking him with it. I was rebuilding the prison around him.
The final panel closed.
Silas stood inside the same transparent box that had once trapped corrupted hounds. The black key lay outside. His void gates opened only into other walls. He struck the glass, and World Bastion absorbed the impact. The more he fought, the stronger the cage became.
I could have crushed it.
I did not. Evil people often expected mercy to mean escape. Silas had prepared smoke bodies, false gates, disposable followers, and remote marks. This cage separated his class pattern from every void anchor without erasing it. He remained alive, visible, and powerless enough to answer for the children in his sanctuary, the market poisoning, the festival attack, and every person nearly lost in the fall of Ashfall. I placed the copied memory crystal against the crucible wall. The silver score carried its record outward. Every functioning memory display in the region showed Silas directing the hollow choir, describing the permanent erasure, and abandoning his own captured enforcers. The truth reached Academy students, city wardens, remote villages, and choir members still waiting for liberation. His organization did not vanish because of one broadcast, but its central lie did. Silas sank to his knees inside the glass. The crucible began to collapse. Omni Sovereign connected me to every beast and summon outside. Through the sky stag, I felt the Academy rising on Harper's balloons. Through the stone cats, I felt Grant organizing the wounded. Through a metal arrow still pinned to Logan's coat, I felt him trying to climb back down toward me. I opened Legion Gate around the entire glass maze. The skill resisted. Summoners called creatures, not ancient structures the size of a district. World Bond Keeper declared the maze a bonded entity. Living Forge declared it crafted. Eternal Regent declared its preserved purpose mine to carry. Aether Dominion supplied power converted from its collapse. World Bastion held its shape. Horizon Piercer aimed at the surface. Boundary Blade cut the distance. Zero-Step Reaper removed the final gap. Genesis Saint repaired what broke during passage. 10 principles agreed on one result. The first crucible, the glass maze, Silas's prison, every surviving beast, and I vanished from the abyss. We reappeared above Ashfall Academy. The extra weight dropped the emergency balloons by 50 feet. Harper shouted something from the bell tower that the wind politely hid from me. Logan cut the arrow from his coat and landed beside the glass cage. Grant arrived slowly, leaning on 2 stone cats. City wardens opened transport seals around Silas. He did not resist. His void badge remained intact, but the repaired maze recognized every gate as an attempted escape and folded it back into the cell. For once, his contingency worked only to keep him exactly where he belonged. The wardens took him away alive. The Academy touched the ground at sunrise. It did not land in its original location. Harper's balloons and the Walking Mountains moles guided the campus onto an empty plateau north of the city. 3 towers were missing. The foundry stood sideways. The infirmary had become attached to the dining hall in a way that made breakfast extremely efficient. Nobody complained. We had lost buildings, equipment, and the old first crucible chamber beneath the ground. We had not lost a single student during the fall. Grant recovered enough to return to teaching, though he pretended his cane was a staff upgrade. Logan remained a lightning duelist. He never gained 10 classes, but he started training ordinary sword forms, rescue knots, and structural support techniques. When anyone asked why the former top student attended beginner workshops, he said rankings were less interesting once he had seen a tortoise carry a dungeon. Harper received an entire laboratory in the rebuilt foundry. She hung the written warning about my weaponized infrastructure over the door and named the lab after it. Her first official project equipped Grant's stone cats with collapsible rescue cranes. Her second gave my bone crow a mechanical compartment for stolen buttons. The academy changed its curriculum. Students still studied their awakened classes, but no one was told that one symbol defined the edge of their usefulness. Tanks learned movement. Archers learned crafting. Healers learned battlefield engineering. Blacksmiths joined dungeon teams from the beginning. Mixed class exercises rewarded strange interactions rather than punishing them. My own status confused every measurement crystal. Omni Sovereign had no rank letter. It displayed one shared experience reserve, full of everything the 10 classes had earned. Using one principle strengthened the others. Healing a summon improved command. Forging an arrow improved aim. Blocking an attack increased magical understanding. The penalty that had kept me F rank while everyone raced ahead had inverted completely. I no longer divided growth among 10 classes. Every action taught one class 10 lessons. The students who once called me tenfold failure tried several replacement nicknames. Most were terrible. I preferred Adrian. The first official test of the new curriculum took place in the repaired glass maze. Nobody wanted to use the structure after it had imprisoned Silas, which made it the perfect place to prove that its purpose had changed. Grant designed a rescue exercise with 10 teams, 10 damaged zones, and no student assigned according to class. The old rules would have placed Logan at the front and Harper behind a workbench. The new rules placed Logan in charge of stabilizing a bridge without lightning, and sent Harper into the center carrying a shield she had built herself. A healer led the scouting group because she could sense injured practice creatures through walls. A tank coordinated ranged signals because defensive awareness gave him the clearest picture of incoming danger. I was forbidden to intervene unless the maze reached actual collapse. Grant emphasized the word actual while looking at me. Silas's remaining supporters ensured that it did. 3 hidden black hooks activated beneath the western lane. The panels began rotating toward the students instead of away from them. Suppression mist entered through old repair channels. The attack was smaller than the festival siege, but it targeted the academy's new belief. If mixed teams failed during their first public trial, fear would push everyone back into rigid roles. The students did not wait for me. Logan abandoned the bridge and used its support ropes to catch a falling wall. The scouting healer crawled through a maintenance shaft and treated a mechanism's overheated joints with cooling magic. Harper stood behind her shield, absorbed 3 panel impacts through its physical springs, then transferred the stored pressure into a launcher that fired rescue lines across the maze. A shy blacksmith climbed those lines and forged replacement hinges while hanging upside down. They had reproduced my defense-to-power principle without copying the skill. The remaining hooks gathered around the central token, where 50 observers watched from behind glass. I entered through Zero Step and stopped before activating World Bastion. Destroying the trap myself would save everyone, but it would also make the new curriculum look dependent on Omni Sovereign. I opened World Bond Keeper across the students instead. For one heartbeat, they felt the positions of every ally, the strain in every rope, the heat in every hinge, and the direction of the suppression flow. I gave them information, not power. They built the answer. Archers pinned the mist vents with ordinary shafts. Mages changed air pressure around the panels. Tanks stood on Harper's cables as counterweights. Healers kept their muscles from tearing. Summoners moved tools rather than fighters. Swordsmen cut only the black hooks. The maze folded inward, trapped the sabotage devices, and delivered them intact to the city wardens waiting outside. The captured operators had expected Silas to escape prison and restore the hollow choir. Instead, they found their attack documented by the same memory system we had used against him. They were arrested without one student being seriously hurt. Public support for the mixed curriculum stopped being a hopeful idea that day. It became evidence. I also learned the most important limit of Omni Sovereign. I could connect every principle, but that did not make my answer the best answer. Sometimes 10 separate people created a combination no single person should own. Silas's public hearing occurred 1 week later in the city arena because no ordinary chamber could safely contain his void gates. The wardens placed the repaired glass maze at the center. Every time he tried to fold space, the living panels redirected the opening into another sealed cell. I attended with the children rescued from the Bell Sanctuary, seated behind a protective wall. Silas refused to apologize. He repeated that his family had died because people obeyed class roles, and he warned that the academy would eventually turn our combinations into new rules as rigid as the old ones. That warning was the last useful thing he gave me. I testified with the copied erasure score, the market memory crystals, and the helmet orders from the forest pursuit. Then I asked that every new mixed technique at Ashfall be taught as a question rather than a prescribed answer. Assassin speed with tank defense worked for me. But another student might combine speed with healing to reach victims, or defense with archery to stabilize impossible shots. The point was never to replace 10 cages with one larger cage. The evidence showed that Silas had knowingly endangered civilians, imprisoned children, sabotaged dungeons, and attempted permanent mass erasure. The wardens sentenced him to a suppression facility built without void-linked materials. Hollow Choir members who had abandoned the order provided locations of the remaining laboratories in exchange for facing their own charges openly. The regional organization collapsed without a secret leader or a promised rescue. Silas watched the children leave the arena. For the first time, he looked less like a prophet and more like a man forced to see the people hidden beneath his theory. He did not ask forgiveness. I did not offer it for them. Accountability was not the same thing as revenge, and keeping him alive meant he would spend years facing consequences he could not escape through smoke. When the wardens transported the maze away, its panels briefly reflected my first F-rank status. I no longer felt ashamed of it. Those 10 empty bars had forced me to study interactions that faster advancement would have hidden. The slowest start in the academy had become the foundation of everything we rebuilt. Weeks after the academy reopened, I returned to the memorial crypt with Harper, Logan, and Grant. The Bone Crow flew ahead, healthy and unbearably proud. The Plague Wraith's chamber had filled with white flowers where my overhealed skeleton exploded. At the center stood a repaired memorial seal, displaying 10 small symbols around one circle. Grant asked whether I planned to rest now that Silas was imprisoned and the Hollow Choir had scattered. I almost said yes. Then the crypt ceiling disappeared, not collapsed, disappeared. Beyond it was a sky I had never seen, filled with enormous dungeon doors orbiting a dark star. My Omni-Sovereign badge turned toward that star. 10 symbols lit around its edge. Then an 11th symbol flickered beyond them. It did not belong to any known class. The opening closed before anyone could move. The crypt returned to normal. Harper immediately began measuring the ceiling. Logan drew his saber. Grant sighed with the exhausted patience of an instructor whose worst student had become the world's most complicated problem. I looked at the 10 symbols around my wrist and remembered the day everyone believed they had ruined me. They had never been 10 chains, they were 10 keys. And somewhere beyond our sky, an 11th door had just noticed me.